Coming down with the heartache.
On this episode of Between Two Beers, we talk to Mike Lane. Mike is Radio Hauraki's content director and was the founder of the Beige Brigade and the Alternative Commentary Collective. In this episode, we talk about the worst things the ACC has said on air, what it's like managing Matt Heath, Jeremy Wells, Lee Hart and Jason Hoyt, what really happened when the ICC booted Lane's commentary team from the World Cup, playing high school cricket with Dan Vettori, battling and beating cancer, the ACC's complicated relationship with New Zealand cricket, and the future of sports broadcasting in New Zealand. The time flew by in this one, with a ton of laughs. Mike is a podcast pro and his endless pit of stories and life experiences is unmatched. This episode was sponsored by Craft Bar, our favourite place to dine in Hamilton. Craft are sponsoring a number of episodes and have been supplying us with some delicious Swedish craft beer to enjoy during the show. Craft have a range of 15 different beers in-house and their beef tartare is genuinely the best in New Zealand. If you're in Hamilton, make sure to show them your support. Mention this episode's secret phrase, Beige Brigade, and you're entitled to $20 off any tab over 100, valid for a week after this episode is published. Check out our brand new website at betweentwobeers.com, where you can find show notes, photos, YouTube clips, and links to Spotify and Apple Podcasts for every episode. If you like what we're doing and want to support the show, there are also links on the site to our Patreon page. A huge thanks to those who have already shown their support. Enjoy the ep.
Coming down with the heartache.
Mike Lane, welcome to Between Two Beers.
Thanks. Lovely beer too.
Yeah, good comment. Well, let's get straight into that. We're into the popples tonight. Shay, I believe it's pronounced Brigade, the New England India Pale Ales, 7%ers.
Yeah, you have gone with the 7%ers, given to us, of course, by Craft, our friends on Hood Street.
Beautiful.
What was the pronunciation again?
Yeah, Brigade. Brigade.
Brigari.
Beautiful drop. Going down smooth. We're in the Auckland studios. You might notice a improvement in audio quality, which is nice. You should be able to hear the full episode in clear, high def sound. Anyway, let's get into the guests tonight. Shay, how do you know Mike Lane?
We've met for the first time tonight, but in small talk before the mics were turned on. We've got a couple of connections through former lovers.
Hey, your lover.
Wow.
Not
My,
mine.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
My one of
as far as I
my
know.
former girlfriends, and same here. And we missed each other in Hamilton, but we'll get into that. And then through some FIFA connections as well.
Nice.
In the Middle East. And what about you, Steve?
Met Mike for the first time tonight. Big fan of his work, the team he works with. We work in the same building. He's downstairs at Hauraki, I'm upstairs at NZME. But yeah, looking forward to he's the kind of guest I've been excited to get on because he's got such a huge locker full of stories and experiences. So
you are a big fanboy as well, aren't you?
Yeah. Love it. So let's get into it. All right, the place we want to start. Mike is the Radio Hauraki content director, but he's also the leader of the ACC, Alternative Cricket Commentary. And so I want to start...
Commentary Collective, I think.
Commentary Collective. Yeah, there we go.
You get nervous in front of your heroes. It's okay, man.
All right, let's just slow down and ease into this one. Okay. So we want to start on the Lions tour. One of our past guests, Dylan Cleaver, joined the ACC for about a month and sort of retold some of their best stories, and I picked up on one of them. It was actually a letter sent in to the Otago Daily Times, a letter to the editor in the newspaper from Carol of
God love Carol
of Waldronville, and I'm going to read it. And it says,
As I don't have, I'm going to do a Carol voice. Yep. That's right. As I don't have Sky and Prime, was not replaying the Lions Crusaders game, I thought I would try the old-fashioned way and listen to a radio broadcast. I had no idea what stations would broadcast, couldn't find listings in newspapers, so I surfed the FM channels, finding one somewhere around 106.4 FM. The game was 5 minutes in play, and I wasn't sure if I was on the correct station, as the announcer was in the middle of relating the most bizarre story I have ever heard on radio, let alone during a sports commentary. He was relating a narrative about a rugby player and a businessman, neither of whom I heard by name. I was so disgusted at the ridiculous commentary, I switched off and can only say, if this is the normal standard of radio broadcast on our national game, then long live Sky, even if I don't have it. Carol.
God bless Carol.
So what a letter. One of the great letters to the editor.
Yeah.
The question is, do you remember... What, and I'll actually preface this. You go on the article to say, we've all got a line we won't cross, but Jeremy's line tends to warp. So I understand this was a story Jeremy was telling, Jeremy Wells.
Yes.
Do you remember the story?
Vividly.
And
and in detail.
And in detail. Okay, what was the story?
Oh, God. I'm glad this is a long-form podcast. First, thanks for having me. It's good to be here, but I'll get straight into this story. So... Carol would have, God knows what she would have thought when she tuned in, because for the Lions series, we simulcast on Hauraki. So normally the ACC only is on iHeart, on a digital channel. So our realms of what's acceptable on digital is a lot different to terrestrial, because, we're bound by BSA. So didn't really, this was the first time we'd simulcast on Hauraki. Anyway, 10 minutes into the game, and Carol's got a little bit wrong. It wasn't a businessman and a rugby player. It was actually an acquaintance of Jeremy's who had jumped on Tinder, or it might have been Grindr actually, and hooked up with a guy, a businessman. There you go, he wasn't a rugby player. And it involved a business sock, not a businessman. So basically, on a Grindr hookup, they're hooking up, but this guy had a huge foot fetish and had gone down and was massaging Jeremy's friend's foot. And just getting really into massaging this foot, and then slowly worked his finger into a little hole that was in like the third toe over, and just started moving his finger in and out. And we're grilling Jeremy, going, what's going on there? And he goes, he was just, and basically he started putting one finger, then two finger into the hole, and then he basically got his downstairs out and put it into the hole made love to this guy's foot. And we were kind of getting into it going, what was in it for, the dude sitting there with his business sock getting molested. And he said he was just, he just got off on the fact that this guy was getting off so much on a business sock and his foot that he kind of was into it as well.
Oh, sorry, the sock was still on?
Yeah.
Oh, right. I thought the sock had come off.
No, the sock's still on. So the sock's on the whole time.
Yeah.
So Jeremy's telling this story 10 minutes into Crusaders Lions, and he's telling it in between plays. So I'd be calling ball by ball. So I'd be like, Lions 10 minutes inside Crusaders territory, line out to the Lions, score 3-0, 10 minutes, and Jerry would just go straight back into telling the story about this guy.
Amazing.
And he kept on going and kept on going, and goes, and obviously this guy finished in the sock as well. So the whole discussion is around what next. What did he do with his sock? Did he leave the Tinder date with just one sock? Did he leave it on? So we went. This conversation went on for probably the full half. So if Carol was still sticking with us then, and God bless Carol. But that wasn't the only complaint that we got on that tour. We got so many. We got a great one from up. The letter started with, I was on my launch in the Bay of Islands. And then you could imagine how it got better than that. And he goes, and I tuned in to the official radio, and I was disgusted by what was going on. So it was pretty funny. But that was for the first time we'd actually put our rugby commentary on terrestrial. So I think for a lot of people who just channel surf, and for all intents and purposes, the ref's mic and the crowd effects was exactly like Sky, exactly like Radio Sport. And that was the goal, to make it sound exactly like that. And for a moment, you think you're listening to the proper coverage, because we like to call it, but then someone will just do something like outrageously dumb or stupid, or a stupid story, and then we'd take it back to the game. So people sometimes would think, they'd go, what, did they actually say that? And then they'd drift like, oh, they didn't say that. They didn't say that. It's the commentators. And then they'd say it again. They go, what the am I listening to? So yeah, that was one of the better ones. That was one of the spicier stories.
That's what makes me laugh, imagining Carol listening, is that kind of generational gap of expecting something and you're providing something so different, and it's just that bewilderment about what is going on. How could I possibly be listening to this?
Is that audio available anywhere now?
I think
in
it
the
is.
archives?
I think it is actually. I think because we podcasted most of it. It probably is actually. Shay. I probably haven't thought about bringing it up, but some of the stuff does need to be brought back up. Let's be honest. There's some of it needs to stay where it is. The funniest. I was just going back to another people who heard stuff they didn't think they were going to hear, talking about this generational thing. Temporarily, we did a deal with New Zealand Cricket where we provided those sports ears for the cricket games, where you could listen to our commentary as live, and we set up a little transmitter from the top of the caravan, and it had like, we set it all up. We didn't cost New Zealand Cricket anything. We set up we got the earpieces and everything, and we said we branded them with ACC, and they said, oh no, you have to have New Zealand Cricket branding on it if you're going to have them in the ground. And we're like, you sure? So they put New Zealand Cricket branding on the box. So all these people were buying them thinking they were going to be Radio Sport or Sky Sport. And it was one of the funniest things, is looking up in the crowd and seeing like an old couple sitting with their earpieces on as some horrendous story, or some story about Lee Hart being a Mumbai taxi driver when he was 18 or something. And they're just like, you could see them both look like, just so confused. But then after half an hour, having them like actually belly laughing, thinking they finally worked out they weren't listening to the proper coverage. But
amazing. Yeah, so as the head of ACC, you are somewhat responsible for what comes out of the host's mouths. Like, is there
Hodaki was probably more concerning. ACC's itself, but
but is there a line, and what's the worst that someone has crossed?
Jesus. Well, the thing is, when the ACC started, the Alternative Commentary Collective, it was only an online product, and since it was streamed online, we knew we weren't subject to Broadcast Standards Authority. There was no jurisdiction there. They couldn't do anything apart from defamation. We could go anywhere and do anything, and we knew that. And when we first started the ACC, we knew we had to do something to cut through. You know, we knew we had to do something different to cut through that, to get people talking. So we knew that content that would be slightly challenging was the way to go, because we couldn't get in trouble. Like, if we did it on Radio Hodaki, BSA would be all over us in a flash, would be fined, everyone hauled over the coals. But we knew that they couldn't touch us. And the best thing about that was, people still complained, but they couldn't do anything about it. So through the RBA, I remember the Radio Bureaus Association just coming up to me and going, "You have causing us so many issues." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "You know." And I was like, "Can't get us there, can you?" And they were like, "Yes, we know that." But probably, I don't know, some of the stories that have come out, I mean, the best thing about it is everyone in the ACC has lived a life. They've all got stories to tell. Good and bad, clean or non-clean. So it's really hard to nail down one story, but there's one particular story that got the most complaints to the BSA. And I don't know how thick-skinned your listeners are. You want me to tell the full line?
Yeah, you tell it.
Okay.
You tell it.
Okay. We went down this line talking about, this is probably the second year of the ACC, maybe even the first year, talking about what porn we thought the New Zealand cricketers were into.
Stephen's favourite topic.
Yeah, and so I'll have a guess about what your porn's into soon. But so obviously it's one of those things where we once we get a storyline, we know, brilliant, we've got 3 or 4 hours of content here, because when you're cricket, it's a hard yak. So we're like, sweet, we got onto a bit of a run around, what porn would Brendan McCullum be into, what porn would, Steady the Ship Williamson be into, and stuff like that. And we found out, as always, we're like, the quiet ones are the ones you got to worry about. Yeah. So we decided that Kane Williamson, and he's probably not, but we decided he was into granddad porn, like granny porn.
Yeah,
that's because he's so quiet and perfect. Yet we reckon he goes home and just goes, I'm just gonna look at some filthy granddad porn, and so that's what we came. That's the conclusion we came to. Yeah. And anyway, so Jeremy then tells a story about he had a former girlfriend who used to go out and buy clothes from op shops, old men's clothes, and make him wear them and make love to her. So that because she had an old man fetish. So he said she was pretty hot, so he just went along with it. And so out of the back of that, so we're all laughing at that. And Lee Baker, who not many people know, but Lee Baker is very funny. But he was a producer of Eating Media Lunch and Unauthorised History of New Zealand. So he's worked with Jeremy a lot. Very clever guy. He starts telling a story about his granddad, and how they always used to tease his granddad about because his granddad always used to tell them that how to do something, how to do that, and he goes, whatever, granddad, tell us something we don't know. Tell us something we don't know. And they were just going at him about, oh, whatever, granddad, tell us something we don't know. And he turned around to them and he said, I'll tell something you don't know. Your grandmother likes it in the arse. and we had an engineer. He won't be mine. His name was Mike, and he older guy, and he was looking after our technical support that day. It was in Hamilton at Seddon Park. I'll never forget it. And Mike was pretty good, and he had headphones down at the front, and he was always monitoring the sound levels and, if the ground effects were too loud. And you could see him chuckling away. He thought it was brilliant. He thought it was a funny, but this time he just threw his headphones off and threw them on the ground. And he came up to me and he goes, too far. And that one sticks out for me because I know when I went to the RBA, they said, you're causing us a few issues. And I said, what is it? Which one is it? And we said, we can't tell you. And I said, is it Granddad's bum? Is it Granddad's bum? And they're like, look, that's that. And he smiled at me and I was like, it's Granddad's bum, isn't it? I knew it was going to be Granddad's bum. That's probably one that sticks out. It has been. But to be fair, those early days, there were some pretty shocking stories and content lines and stuff that we've gone down, and we've done some pretty outlandish things just to get attention. But in the last couple of years, it has evolved a little bit. Maybe we'll get into that a bit later on. But and where we're going with the ACC and sports entertainment and podcasting and shows and stuff like that. But those early years it was the Wild West, man, and it still is the Wild West. Online broadcasting. You still can't touch you. You can still do whatever you want as long as you don't defame anyone. You can do whatever the fuck you want. So that's what we did for a long time, and to a point where we got quite so popular that we probably had to, and we had sponsors on board, and then you got a few sponsors on board who get a bit iffy about stuff. Not that our sponsor has ever tried to control our content, but it is kind of makes us more attractive to probably bigger sponsors if we kind of just tighten up our content a little bit. But yeah, Granddad's bum's probably up there for me.
Amazing. We're going to track how this all came to be. The other story I want to get straight to, because I feel like this one kind of pushed the ACC really in everyone's faces during when Lee Hart came on the field during the Cricket World Cup. And you guys got banned from the game and the media coverage from it. It was everywhere. I remember I was like, shit, the ACC.
Speaking of sponsors, they ran away from you, didn't they?
That was the sponsors stitched us up on that one. So it was the Cricket World Cup 2015. We'd only been operational for one season, and that was the New Zealand-India 5-match one-day series. And we are aligned to NZME, and we piggybacked all the NZME rights. And we managed to negotiate to commentate the Cricket World Cup via NZME's right, via Radio Sports rights. And we were pretty pumped about that. We were like, this is awesome, because all we wanted to do seriously was just go to the games. We just wanted to go to the games and watch them. So we were pretty stoked to do that. And so we got Pepsi Max on board. They were our sponsor for that whole Cricket World Cup. And obviously Pepsi own Gatorade. Gatorade were the official on-drink sponsor of the World Cup. They drove on with a golf cart with the phallic blow-up Gatorade bottle on the back. And so our sponsor was like, so they have a competition on Gatorade. So the first 3 drinks breaks have winners on them. You can go and take drinks out on the field. So you'd get to drive the cart out and sit in the middle of the field.
Like a punter.
Yeah, a punter, yeah.
Right.
But the thing is, you don't get to hand the drinks to the players. It's just all for show. You basically give drinks to the umpires because the teams bring their own drinks out, and this big phallic inflatable Gatorade just comes out into the middle, does a couple of laps, gives the drinks to the umpires, and then leaves. So they said the 4th drinks break of every game, there's a spare seat on the cart if any of you guys want to come on it. And we were like, yeah, why not? I'd love to go for a drive out in the cart, and go to the middle and say good day to the umpires. So, ironically, first game, against Sri Lanka, didn't make it to the fourth drinks break. We're ready to go. They said, if fourth drinks break, just one of you, whoever's one, just meet us down by the tunnel. Sweet. Next one was it England or Australia? Both of those games never made it to the fourth drinks break. Scotland down in Dunedin never made it to the fourth drinks break. Almost did. Lee was sitting on the cart in the tunnel, and we won, and he came back and goes, we're like, oh, okay. So ironically, the only game, or the first game that went to a fourth drinks break was Afghanistan, New Zealand at McLean Park. And of course, we've been invited so many times. Every game they'd come over and say who wants to do it, and whoever wasn't commentating would just go, okay, yeah, I'll go. So this time, Lee wasn't on. So they go, oh, Lee, do you want to come? He goes, oh, yeah, okay, whatever. As Lee does, and strolls over and gets into the cart and, drives out. And, we thought it was pretty funny because Lee's out there with his suit on and he drives out. But the PA guy, the ground announcer, recognised that it was Lee and started playing the Hamster Man from Amsterdam theme and introduced him onto the field and made it a bit of a thing, which is pretty harmless. And Lee got out and the umpires were like, you're the best dressed, water boy we've ever had out here. And he's like, oh, thanks, mate. And, gives them. And then, of course, a couple of the New Zealand players go past, I think it was Martin Guptill and might have been Grant Elliott go past and go, g'day, Lee, how are you? And he's like, g'day, guys. And as they're crossing, just say g'day. And Lee got back on the drinks trolley and came back and, came back into the caravan. We said, how's that? He's like, it was all right. Went out and gave some drinks. It was pretty boring. And so that was it, really. And then end of the game came. We all jumped in a taxi and booted it straight to the airport because we had to fly back that night because everyone had various breakfast shows and work to do. So we were in the airport. We blagged our way into the Corrie Lounge. So we were all there having a few beers in the Corrie Lounge. And I must have had about 8 missed calls on my phone from, at the time I was the head of news and talk at NZME. And eventually I rang him back and he's like, please don't tell me it's true. And I was like, please do not tell me you did that. And I was like, fuck me, we did some pretty bad shit doing this commentary. First of all, we did guess the commentator's perineum, where Jeremy took a photo of his perineum and then we put it online and people guessed whose it was. And I was like, it wasn't guess the perineum. And he goes, what? And I was like, okay. And then the second one was guess the commentator's milk of the Japsy, where someone put some spit in it. It was horrendous into a tissue. And then you had to guess whose milk of the Japsy it was. And I was like, it wasn't the milk of the Japsy thing. And he goes, what the fuck are you talking about? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he goes, you stole a drinks trolley and you took it on in the drinks break and you interviewed players live on the field. The ICC have thrown you out of the tournament. And I was like, what? I was so confused. I was like, what? That is so not what happened. That is, I was like, oh, it's too late. They made a decision. And we were like, okay, so that's it, is it? So we've no, and so we have no recourse. We can't do anything. And he goes, yeah. And we're like, oh, well, that's bullshit. We're obviously not going to lie down and take this. So obviously we went straight away. And then the next day, someone in the Herald wrote an article and didn't even put their name to it, ratting us out, saying that we'd gone on the field and we'd been thrown out of the World Cup. At the time, we were pretty fucked off about it because we were like, we love our cricket and we loved going to the cricket and being part of it. And then to be stitched up, I mean, if it was legit, we would have taken it on the chin. But it was a total beat up. We found out later that the reason why it was a bit of a beat up because, I mean, a few games previous, some things that happened, I look back and go, okay, that's why they had it out for us and they were just looking for an excuse. First game in Christchurch, for example, we were in the broadcast compound. By the way, the caravan was never anywhere near the ground. It was either in the car parks where we couldn't see it. We couldn't see anything. We just had a TV in the caravan. But we were out in the kind of out the back, and the whole ICC exec team were walking along back of house, and it was like, what's that guy's Giles Clark or whatever, and all his buffies. We didn't know that, but at the same time, a caterer came and put 2 boxes of spates through the window of the caravan while we were singing Ronky Donkey in the caravan. It was shaking. And apparently they were like, what the hell's going on in there? And they go, oh, that's the alternative commentary team. And they were like, oh, okay, that looks a bit stupid to me. And then in Auckland, we caused a bit of a kerfuffle with one of the ICC match officials who wouldn't let us we had our caravan, we could see through a gap through the gates, and we could see the field, and we'd moved it slightly, and they found out we'd moved it, and went absolutely ballistic at us. By this stage, I had stolen the groundskeeper's tractor and put it right against the bum of the caravan so they couldn't move it, and stolen the keys. And so at this stage, we caused a bit of a scene at those two games, and I think this was the straw that broke the camel's back. And it was a fairly big straw because Star TV complained and said that no broadcaster is allowed on the field except them. We weren't helped by our own. Brian Waddle was not a massive fan, so he was quietly chuffed that we got thrown out. But we got in touch with Pepsi, because ultimately Pepsi put us in that position, and they were like, yeah, no, we'll talk to ICC and we'll sort this out, blah, blah, blah. Radio silence. They just disappeared into the distance. Yeah. We never saw them again. But we were fucked off for probably 2 days or so. And we kept feeding the media. Like, they were trying to shut us down, but we just kept leaking like sivers just to make the story keep on going, because we knew it was good. We know a good opportunity when we see it. So, we got told, I'll probably get in trouble for this if anyone here at NZME listens, but they told us, like, stop talking to who's leaking this to the media. And we were getting Paul Ford to do it from down in Wellington, who wasn't employed by NZME or anyone. So we were just getting him just to feed all the stuff to them, and it just kept it going. And then we think, actually, we're probably onto something quite good here. So anyway, we were banned, and we negotiated back we were still able to commentate the games, but we weren't allowed to be at the grounds or anywhere near the grounds. I think within 2 kilometres of the grounds we weren't allowed to be. So yeah. After we kind of kept feeding the media, i.e. our own kind of publication, the New Zealand Herald, closely followed by Stuff, and just about everyone else, it actually went global that a commentary team had been thrown out of a Cricket World Cup. And we thought, actually, it's a pretty good badge of honour, actually. So we're kind of like, we can use this. So once we actually did give the reason why we're thrown out, the fact that we didn't do anything wrong, I think the ICC, in the end, probably went like, okay, they probably haven't done anything wrong. They can still broadcast. I think they threatened to actually pull radio sports commentary as well because of us. So obviously NZME shitting the bed.
Yeah.
But I think we negotiated back. We could still cover the games. We just couldn't go to the games. So we were like, okay, that's fine. So we set up a wee bunker down the garage. We set up a big screen. We just turned it into this basically a giant lounge, and we just had beers. In the end, it was probably actually a bit better because we could do whatever we wanted and not under the eye of ICC, and because we had match officials all over us all the time. So in hindsight,
was that a really great thing to happen to you?
Like the best thing probably, because our wickets, and being digital audience only, our audience tripled the next game.
Really?
So the next game was, I think it was this quarterfinal, New Zealand versus West Indies in Wellington, and audience tripled because all of a sudden people knew who we were. There was pictures of Lee and Jeremy and Matt all over the papers. So people were like, oh, those guys are all commentating cricket. Sweet. So actually, it was the best thing in hindsight. It was just 2 or 3 days of just being shitty at the fact that we got blamed for something we didn't do. But in the end, we just owned it. People would go, oh, you stole a drinks trolley. We're like, yeah, man, we stole the shit out of that drinks trolley.
Do you have that trick up your sleeve now? Like, as an experienced marketer, is that like guerrilla marketing something you might look to do in future?
Well, yeah, but you can't manufacture that though. Like, yeah. We've done some stupid shit, like, and we've I got my vasectomy done while commentating a New Zealand Australia game at Eden Park, and we thought, we'll just keep what more stupid shit can we do? And we commentated the cricket and the Melbourne Cup simultaneously. We commentated a Warriors game while commentating the cricket simultaneously, and we just did a bunch of stupid shit just because we could. One that really backfired is, because people text us all the time, and a guy texted us and said, I own a strip club. I'll send one of my girls down. Where are you based? And I said, let that one go through to the keeper. And I think one of them someone just texted back, sure. And within half an hour, there was a girl knocking at the door with this big duffel bag. And we were like, oh, fuck. And we live stream everything, video live stream it. And this one probably got us in the most trouble, and probably that it had to squirm out of anyway, was so
personally or professionally?
Both. So everything's live streamed. So people who have watched ACC, we live stream everything on YouTube as well of us commentating, that kind of whole watch along experience. And so this girl came in, I've forgotten her name, but she had a duffel bag full of just the most horrendous things. And she also lit fire out of one of orifice or something. And we were like, so I said, okay, look, I kind of had an idea. And I said, this could work. This could work. If you come in and strip, but have your back to the camera. I don't want to see any nude. No, I don't want to see nipple or vagina or asshole. I don't want to see any toys. But if you strip with your back to the camera and facing the team, but the team are going to completely ignore you, okay? So, and commentate cricket. And so I thought, that gag might work. And she came in and started dancing around, and they were in the middle of a biscuit chat, the Biscuit 11, where the chit chats and Tim Tams open up, followed by Toffee Pops, and and they were just arguing about. I found it very funny. They're arguing about biscuits, and there's a naked woman trying to be all sexy and erotic in front of them, and they were totally ignoring him. And Jason Hoyt is just going, "In comes Ben Stokes," and he's just commentating. They're arguing about biscuits. He's commentating the cricket, and there's a nude woman. So people are watching the stream going, "What the fuck is going on here?" Yeah. But then she broke protocol, and she climbed up on the desk and then jumped on top of, I think, James McConey. By this stage, Jason Hoyt had left. He'd left the room. I got to be part of this, Mike. I am out, mate. But my wife sees this, and so he leaves, and then they all went pear-shaped, and I was just like, so I was like, cut it. It's like, get her out. We can't do this. God, fuck, what have I done? And then, of course, went home, woke up in the morning to an absolute shitstorm because, the studio we did it in was an NZME property. It was a Sunday night. No one was around, but, it was like, oh, fuck it. Yeah, it was a spicy meatball, that one, to deal with. And, we had sponsors' product all over the desk. And they were like, we don't want to be associated with it. I was like, well, no shit. But, so we had deleted the video straight away. It's probably somewhere. I thought it was funny, but it was one of those ones where you kind of live and you learn. I was like, that was probably the wrong decision to make.
How did it do for eyeballs? Did the audience?
Yeah. That was massive. It was huge. Again, it was probably one of our biggest spikes of the whole that whole series was that. But I was like, but the amount of admin afterwards probably wasn't worth it, to be honest.
When you are into the admin afterwards and you're having the conversation with a sponsor, for example, is there an element, because at the end of the day they're just people as well, right? Yeah, they're representing a product, but is there any sort of leeway or any giggles from their side?
I mean, and the best thing about our sponsors is they come in with their eyes wide open, and what works for them and what works for us is they let us control the content and they let us control how we work with their product, and that's why it works, and they just have to trust us. So it's not like they know we're just going to sit back and be good. They know there's going to be it's a bit spicy. And there was a few of them who they had just said don't do it again, and so they can go to their manager and say we've talked to them and they said don't do it again. But no, wink wink, it was funny. But that's what's so unique about probably all our partners, people like Mammoth, who are Fonterra, who you'd think would be the straightest. They were great. They just let us go crazy. But, we partnered them with the Steady the Ship hats. So those Kane Williamson hats, that was a partnership with Mammoth. So, buy a couple of Mammoths, get a free Steady the Ship hat at BP's, and their sales just went through the roof. So they were over the moon. So stuff like that. And we got partnered with Mainland Cheese, where we just get a 3-man slingshot and slingshot blue vein cheese at 200 kilometres an hour at someone to try and catch it. Like, this shit like that, using their products how they've never allow anyone to do that before, but this kind of with... So that's a good thing about our partners.
Is it good for you having sort of some regulators and like Hauraki and the sponsors keeping you in line to a point, or is the dream job having and being able to literally do whatever the fuck you want?
Oh yeah, I suppose. I mean, I'd love to do whatever the fuck I want, but I suppose there's not, the audience there is probably limited. I don't know, you know what I mean? It's quite fun pushing the boundaries of regulators. That's quite fun, being told you can't do something. Whenever someone says you can't do something, I always find a way around of trying to do it anyway, and just, so it's kind of, I suppose having the regulators there helps you think of a new way of doing it or getting around stuff. But yeah, the Hauraki is, it's a very different beast. But it's funny having all the same people that work on ACC work on Hauraki. So it's quite funny because I think they just use the ACC as a creative release, because a lot of radio people just don't shut up. And on radio, you actually got to shut up. You've got 3 minutes to entertain, then get the fuck out so we can play a song. But on ACC, you can just talk for as long as you want, do whatever you want. So I think they find that quite a good release.
Yeah, so how did what's the timeline of how those families came together? Were you guys all a group of mates, you and Jeremy and Matt and Lee and Jason, and then the ACC formed, and then you got the job at Hauraki on the back of that, and all those guys kind of came over at the same time, or how did that all merge?
It's a funny, it's a good question. It's a funny one. So basically, I know Jeremy for a very long time. We were doing a cricket podcast. We were doing the BYC podcast after Paul Ford dropped the ball for a while, and Dylan Cleaver and myself.
Which is back. I see straight to the top of the sport podcast charts.
Yeah, but that's the first week bump. Everyone gets that. Everyone gets the first week bump.
We didn't get the first week.
Is that the original sports podcast in New Zealand, the BYC?
It's coming up 350 odd episodes. It's been around a long time. Had a bit of a hiatus, but we restarted doing that, and we started doing it at TRN NZME up in Cook Street. And I'd known Jeremy for ages, and I knew Matt because I was working at NZME at the time, but I wasn't the content director of Radio Hauraki, so I was out and about and kind of milling about. So I knew Matt, knew Jeremy, and an opportunity came to do something. Another friend of ours ran an agency, a creative agency, who was working with New Zealand Cricket at the time. They had just been appointed, so we were coming up with a bunch of new ideas. They wanted New Zealand Cricket was at the lowest of low. It was the Brendan McCullum, Ross Taylor saga. They'd just been dismissed for 43 or whatever in South Africa. It was pretty dire. So they wanted as many ideas as possible. They were quite obsessed with Jeremy and Jeremy's love for the cricket. So we came up with this alternative updates concept.
I remember those.
Yeah, and it was basically me and Jerry going around all the games and Jeremy talking about everything but the cricket. So he would go and talk to the dude making the hot dogs or the pizzas or the groundsman or just it was so weird. And we just basically broadcast those back into Hauraki twice an hour, 3 times an hour at all the one days for a series. And then the next year they were like, what else can we do? And then we're like, well, how about we just go on a caravan and we'll commentate the games, because we can put it on iHeart, and we knew we could. And they were like, and originally it was the alternative commentary caravan, and then we were like, well, alternative cricket caravan or whatever, and we changed it to alternative commentary collective because we knew we could probably do other sports at some stage. And then New Zealand Cricket, went sure. And ironically, New Zealand Cricket funded our first proper season. They created the beast. So because they knew they had an audience that they wanted to engage with. It was a kind of disenfranchised cricket fan who was a fan but didn't relate to the media that was broadcasting it with Radio Sport and Sky. It was all pretty stale, and they just didn't relate to that sort of coverage. And we were cricket fans. We'd play last man stands. We'd play stuff in the weekends where we'd just sit around, drink beer, and talk shit. And we're like, why don't we just do that? Why don't we do a commentary team that has no former players, just a bunch of mates, drink some piss, commentate the game, and just tell stories. But we have to commentate the game, because if we were listening, we'd want to know what's happening and what the score was, because we're cricket fans, but we don't need to hear about some bullshit analysis just to pad through a couple of hours of a test match. Let's just talk shit, tell stories, no limits, let's go for it. So Jeremy was like, well, Matt was in straight away, and I said, well, Paul Ford, who I started the Beige Brigade with, knows a shitload about cricket, smart guy. He was like, yep, okay, he's in. So we're just ringing around, yep, Paul's in. Jerry's like, okay, I'll give Lee Hart a call. And I was like, okay, good luck. And Lee, what are you up to? No much. Sweet, he's in. And he goes, another guy who's an actor. And this is Jeremy. He's an actor, and he's a cricket umpire.
Not many people realise that about him.
Yeah, he's a cricket umpire. You might have seen him in Sugar and Spice. And I was like, what? He got Jason Hoyt. And I was like, oh yeah, get him on. Sweet. And then we got Lee Baker, who's, was just a massive cricket nerd. And that was the base of it. And I'd only met Jason and Lee a handful of times before we actually did our first game. But because of the dynamics around all those people, everyone just kind of got on, and they loved cricket. Lee who knew nothing about cricket, but he just loved talking shit and drinking beers, so it was perfect for him. Yeah. So where he'd made up for his lack of cricket knowledge, he certainly made up in his shit talking and beer drinking.
What an incredibly talented group of mates to be able to pull together.
Yeah,
you've called up 4 guys who are now big name radio hosts and sort of B grade celebrities in New Zealand. They've come together just on this project. I think a lot of groups of friends think that they could do a good job talking shit or doing commentary or doing these sort of ideas, but having the ability to actually pull it off, well,
that's how we started, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just a couple of mates that wanted to talk to people with interesting stories.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, a lot of luck. We had a lot of luck. I mean, in terms of New Zealand cricket at the lowest ebb, a few friends who we went up to much, but they love cricket, and at just the right time, right place at the right time. We had a platform, a newish platform that was still finding its feet in iHeartRadio. Which was relatively cheap to, you didn't need frequencies, and it was immediate and easily transportable. So a lot of things kind of fell in line for us. And also, I think fans were kind of keen for something new. So, it was an interesting bunch to get together because out of the back of that first season, Jeremy started breakfast on Hodaki with Matt Heath. And during this kind of second season of the ACC, Lee and Jason started doing a show on Hodaki 1 hour a day. It was like 6 till 7 or something. It was the sweetest show of all time. Yeah. Even then, they struggled to pull that together. And then the following year, they took over the drive show completely. So it was that stage I had drive show and breakfast show both on ACC. It was very difficult to juggle especially when sports games.
But that talent, like putting Jeremy and Matt together, was from hearing them on the ACC.
Yeah, I think I'd like to say it was, but I think that was already in the pipeline before we started. I think they were discussing that, but their first show was the day after our first broadcast in Napier, New Zealand, India. So that was their first breakfast show the next day. But I think something had been bubbling for a while on that one. But definitely Jason and Lee and Boujar and how that came about. And then we knew we had to get new people in, so we got Scotty Stevenson in, who was just always floating around. He was a friend of the show, and everyone knew him. And then we people like Ben Hurley now, who's part of the team, and then we drag in people like Mike Minogue, who's off Wellington Paranormal. He's just a massive cricket fan and sounds great, and he's funny. And we're just pulling in people if they want to come in. We've been criticised a little bit recently in this day and age about not being having enough females in there, and it's just a big sausage fest. But we're totally open to it. All it is for us is we want to work with you and you're good and you get on with everyone, then sure, go for it. So we've had Mel Bracewell's come on a few times. We had Karen O'Leary, who was a big cricket fan. He does Wellington Paranormal with Mike Minogue. But, we welcome with open arms. It's not like a closed door. It's just, I don't think a lot of people actually really want to work with us. You know what I mean? They see a bunch of dudes talking about dude stuff and drinking beer and whatever. I think most of them are like, do you know what? You guys are actually okay. We'll leave you to do your thing. So
I mentioned on the podcast with Dylan, to me, it looks like the dream. It's kind of like a hobby, which I don't know how much money you make from it, but the excuse to be working and to go away, especially during cricket season, and to get the pass card to go and be with your friends, drinking beer, watching cricket, talking shit like you. It's everything you'd be doing anyway. Yeah, but it's your job.
Yeah, totally.
Does it feel like that, though, for you? Is there a work element to it, like planning and preparation?
There is a little bit. I mean, we tried to make it that we said, look, otherwise we wouldn't have got these guys on board if we said, if it was going to be punishing and it was going to be regimented and, just do this, that, now they're thinking, fuck, I'm out of here. But giving it that looseness and just going and have a few beers and no, there's no rules. There's no.
I was going to ask, is there anything scripted?
No.
Or is it all just.
No, it's all.
Do you test material out beforehand?
Yeah, we don't test it, but you can. No, we don't at all. No, we never test it. We always back ourselves that at least one out of the 6 or 7 people there has got something. And so you just hope like hell they do. And usually something comes up and there's a vein of content that you just go down. So I must admit the actual listeners are better than us. Like when we started doing the agenda, so we do a 10-point agenda for one dayers. And people just send through the agenda items and we write them down and then we just go through them. And that was just, that's a godsend because we're like, we're out. Fuck, we're done. And then people would just send in these great topics and then we'd blast through them. So that's really helped as well. But no, none of it's scripted.
How's the alcohol consumption? Are some of the crew more lightweight than others? Are you able to manage? Is it ever an issue?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He says,
the
glancing.
funny thing is, like, I mean, at the start, the caravan, and God bless the caravan, like, the caravan was almost part of it as well, and part of the charm. It was about a bit of a marketing ploy. We don't have the caravan anymore because it was so dodgy to broadcast out of the, you know, the broadcast became, actual quality of the broadcast became more important as the years went on, because we couldn't risk going off air for 10, 15 minutes because we had sponsors on board and we had an audience and we needed to keep them. So a couple of years ago, we had to make the decision to retire the caravan because purely it was, firstly, it fucking stunk and it was uncomfortable, but it had great character. But for the first 3 or 4 years, it was a Trojan horse for booze. Like, we would go into grounds and have so much piss in the back of that caravan that would just be like, it would go back, its back axle would be on the ground because it had beers and vodka and ice. At one stage, we got a barman in who was making
ice,
cocktails.
the liquid.
Not meth. No, we had so much booze in there, and like, I mean, obviously, they were turning a blind eye. They must have been, because they let us get away with it for a couple of seasons, and then the next season came along and they had a security guard on us the whole time, and most stadiums had a camera on us the most of the times as well, to see us wheel up the wheelie bin at the end of the game. You know, when pubs close at night and they're empty their skip bin, that was like us. Yeah. We'd wheel out and as we just sit there sinking beers. But no, I mean, look, we were just doing what we'd do anyway at a cricket ground and just drink a few beers and talk crap. There was a few times that, you know, either Jeremy and I would just have to, someone would say to someone, "Oh, you've probably done for the day," or whatever. Half the time it was me. But
you have to sub yourself out. Mike, you're done for the day, mate.
I actually subbed myself off once because I had far too many drinks, and it was that 2020 against Australia at Eden Park, you know, when we scored a Basquillian runs. We were like 200 and something, 220 or 230 or something, and we had it in the bag. We were celebrating at half time, and I was sinking past, blah, blah, blah. And then there was that catch off Trent Bolt. It was a waist-high full toss, and then I think it was whoever scored all the runs. It might have been Warner or someone smashed it to the boundary, and they caught it.
Yeah.
And I was like, got it! I was doing the pull by ball. I was like, got him! And then I saw the thing. I was like, oh, for fuck's sake! And I was like, and I walked off, and I put my headphones down, and I walked off and just red-carded myself because I had too many beers and I was starting to drop an F-bomb, because we try not to swear as well. That's a big thing. It's like we try to tell the most outlandish stories, but try and talk our way around it with being outlandishly crude about it. You know, I know some of the stories are crude, and that sounds...
But that's the cleverness that comes through. Yeah. It's the subtleness of the words and the way you're articulating these filthy, horrendous deeds.
Is that something that you take heart in as well? Is that you've almost created like a lexicon amongst people of terms that you use through radio commentary, nicknames for people? Yeah. I've started calling him Mike Hoskins Satutu all the time.
Mike Hoskins Satutu is one of the great names.
But you know what I mean?
And it's like, especially when he was marauding out on the right wing there, it's perfect when he was out right on the right wing.
But stuff like punishing and punish, like all of that is now just everyday language.
Yeah, well, I suppose it is. I don't think everyone goes out of their way to do that. I think we just, like any group of mates that get together for too long, their languages start to sink and they start talking the same. And I suppose that ran across Hodaki as well, with your g'day mates, and all that kind of carry on. The nicknames are fun. The nicknames are fun though, because we go. I'll tell you another good story about the nicknames. Is the cricket players love them. Like at Trent Bolt's wedding, he had lovely Trenty sign on the inside of his suit. Tim Southey was in the groom's party, had Sexy Camel on the inside of his. Like they kind of adopted them, and they're quite harmless nicknames, most of them.
How many of the ACC got invited to the Saudi wedding?
None.
No,
not quite. Not quite that close. Okay. They'd never do that. Yeah. Maybe we're kind of stag do friends, probably. not really wedding friends.
Two of them were at the Gupta wedding.
Oh yeah, no, Matt and Jerry were there because they were doing breakfast with Laura. Yeah, at the time. So the nicknames are great, and it gave them a bit of personality as well, because Grant Elliott, the hairy javelin, that was Nathan McCullum that gave him that nickname. That wasn't us. Nathan McCullum was just in the caravan and started calling him the hairy javelin, and we just adopted it and ran with it. And you know, like the Komodo dragon was Nathan McCullum just because he got no neck and the way he operates and stuff like that. So
was it Dog Roll got?
Dog Roll,
got picked up somewhere?
It was Barrett, yeah. Yeah, it was in a press conference because we did that dive in the World Cup or whatever. Yeah. So,
Man, they're called dog roll.
Yeah.
No one calls them that.
Yeah, no one calls him. Well, he called himself dog roll. But anyway, so obviously the nicknames for the cricket players are all pretty harmless. And then we started covering rugby. And we didn't really know the rugby players as well as we knew the cricket players, because we actually got to know the cricket players reasonably well going on tour, because you see them every day and they're really nice guys. The rugby players we didn't spend much time with, so didn't really know them that well. We only knew Kieran Reid, who at the time was captain, so that was a handy man to know. And he's come on the ACC a few times as well. He's a really good dude. And he didn't really give us much. We said, what if they don't like the nickname? And he goes, fuck that. You don't get to choose your own nickname. We're like, okay. So we went nuts, and we were like, cool. Aaron Smith was the word, because we called Aaron Smith Dick Pick to start off with. Yeah. And then we called him after David, after his letter, and kind of stuff like that. And unfortunately, we then had to play a charity match, the Black Clash, the first Black Clash, and we were commentating it, but we were on the players' bus, and we're sitting at the back of the bus, and Matt Heath sat down, and Aaron Smith sat next to him. And you could just see Matt physically just like, oh, fuck. And Aaron Smith's like, it's like kind of like introduce himself, and he's like, and Matt's like in his full ACC gear, so it's obviously like, and he's like, oh man, love what you guys do. Oh, fuck, man, nickname you give me, man. My mum listens to you guys, man. Like, and Matt's like, well, firstly, why is your mum listening to us? And he's like, but yeah, fuck, man. Like at the game today, everyone was just yelling Dick Pick and after David at me. It's like, come on, man, like. There's a couple of indiscretions I've done, and so Matt's like visibly like, oh shit, and I'm like 2 seconds around. He's like, Lane. I was like, what? He goes, come here. Sits me down. He goes, Aaron doesn't like his nicknames. It's just like, I'm like, oh fuck, and then we again was like, oh, and he's such a fucking nice guy, Aaron Smith. He was such a good dude about it. That he's at Matt's campaign changed his nickname to Aaron from Distribution, because we have Ben from Accounts when in the Highlanders and Aaron from Distribution. So we call him Aaron from Distribution, but there was a couple of others as well that Kieran Reid then got all of their nicknames printed on the back of their end of year. They're like a Mad Monday type situation. They get shirts printed with all their nicknames on it. And so all of them walking around with these nicknames, like Dane Coles has got the runny bum on the back of his, and like stuff that we kind of like never thought we'd actually just get past the chat between us is now on the back of training jerseys and stuff like that. So we were like, and some of them I don't think, we tried to make them a bit more fun now rather than any sort of cutting or any sort of backstory, you know what I mean? Like dog roll. That guy just looks like he's got a dog roll. Scott Barrett. He looks like he's operating a dog roll. So we just call him dog roll. And then when we commentate, it's like dog roll. so yeah.
Do you have moments when you're thinking back to where this all started from? And we'll get into Beige Brigade soon, but ACC, alternative commentary, you and Jeremy doing little stuff with the food trucks.
Yeah.
And now it's to the point where All Blacks are complaining to you on bus rides about the nicknames because you've been too hard on them, and you've got this huge audience that are giving them shit.
Yeah.
And you're like, fuck, this has gotten like way bigger than I ever could have imagined.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's so weird. Because Aaron Smith was saying, because it was a cricket match, and he goes, fuck, it's hard playing cricket, man, because you're on the boundary, you can hear everyone. In a rugby game, you can't hear anyone in the crowd. You can't hear anyone's giving you shit. And he said, they'll just give me shit the whole time in a cricket game. Yeah, it is kind of weird. And it's like, and you've got the All Black captain texting you. I remember he texted me, because we met him at work a few times, and he texts out of the blue, he goes, G Lane, eye sockets Reid here. Can you... He calls himself his own nickname. I need... and I was at the pub at the time, and I was like, what the fuck? All Black captain wants a list of the nicknames, and he's called himself G'day G Lane here's eye sockets here. What a great New Zealander he is. So that was kind of weird. It was like when you got the All Black captain kind of taking part in it and wanting to be part of it and stuff, and finding it hilarious and seeing a market for it, the fact that people don't take themselves too seriously. It's sports entertainment at the end of the day. There is... Obviously, we're never going to get anywhere near the mainstream because we're alternative. That's what we are. We're an alternative option to the mainstream, and that's what we'll always be. But yeah, it's great to. It is very weird. You're right, Steve. It's kind of you look back and go, Jesus Christ.
Is the other thing that is a little bit weird? People coming up to you and thinking that they know you in bars and places like that. Does that happen? One, does that happen a lot? And two, you sometimes just go, fucking leave me alone.
Happens more to probably Matt and Jeremy and Lee and Jace, probably. until they want to get away from them and they point me out. And they go, oh, that's G Lane, and they run over and punish me. But
Is
it's all part of the
there
territory.
quite a lot of homosexual interest in Jeremy on tours when he's out on the town?
Do you know what? I think he awakens the kind of the hidden homosexuality of the South Island in particular. In Christchurch in particular, it tends to just bring out, this underbelly of homosexuality that they didn't know they had when Jeremy's there. So all of a sudden, he's just surrounded by dudes just looking at him lovingly, like, it's pretty funny. It is pretty funny. But everyone's pretty good because they know that's part of the gig. When we do pub gigs like the Lions, we're commentating to 500 people at the King's Arms. You know that they're going to want to come over. Most of them just want to have a beer with you or buy you a beer.
Yeah.
99% of them just want to come up, go, cheers, man, fuck, thanks for that, you guys are awesome, and then they fuck off. There's the 1% that will come up and just wound you. And you either got to look for an exit strategy pretty quick, or you give him a little help, and then you come over and just intercept and you're away. But 99% of the time, people are pretty good because they know it's... But I mean, it's funny because you talk about how much we drink a lot in the commentary, so automatically people just try to out-shock us. So... we'll tell a story about the Grandad's Bum one, for example, but then we'll be at the pub and then someone will just come up and just out of the blue tell us some fucking horrendous story about them shitting in their mate's mouth or something. And I was like, God, man, I don't know about that. And they're like, oh, come on, you guys told that story. And it's like, oh, I didn't, because that's quite funny. They kind of think to talk to us, they have to try and shock us with something horrendous. Like,
yeah. That's how they think they'll impress you, right? Because you're so personable. They feel like Shay was saying you're part of their group of mates without them actually participating in it.
Yeah.
And then they're like,
I was going to show you my red wine video from Papua New Guinea, but I won't now.
Those guys come getting their pieces out and stuff. Like Dylan wrote about it in he don't think he put all of it in the article, but guys just, because we'd be commentating, there'd be a glass window, and the amount of cocks are coming up against the window, and then they get the girlfriend drops her pants, and then she put everything against the window, and we were just like, I'm commentating a rugby game, and I've got a vagina 10 centimetres from my head against the glass. It's a very distracting thing. Yeah. But it's like, but they try to do it because they think that's what you do. And we're like, we've created this. Now, I remember looking at it, Jeremy goes, this is our fault. We've done this, so we can't exactly act upset about it. So you just got to embrace it, I guess.
It's a nice seg. I mean, your name, they call you, I don't know if you call yourself Mike Grotlane.
That's a school nickname, and I blame Jeremy for that because 100% blame him for that because it was a nickname I got when I was playing cricket for my school. We're
going back to school now. We're going right back to St. Paul's because we're Hamilton boys and you did your schooling in Hamilton.
Yeah.
Not many people know you were head boy of St. Paul's.
Yes.
And for those who don't know St. Paul's, it's kind of an upper class. We're both Hamilton boys, but St. Paul's is kind of a bit preppy, a bit sort of snobby.
I wouldn't say snobby, but it's probably because
you went there.
Because it's private. Yeah, I guess.
Private school.
Yeah.
But to be head boy, you've got to have a little bit of everything in your locker. So were you a good
did you
student?
grow up in Hamilton?
Yeah. I grew up in Hamilton, Woodstock Primary.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's okay.
Yeah. My brother went
to take that back.
My brother went to Fairfield College, and he was like pretty bitter about the fact that he went to Fairfield College and I went to St. Paul's.
For those that don't know, they're only a few hundred metres away from each other.
Yeah, they are. No, Woodstock is where I went. What was the question?
Were you a good student? To be head boy, you've got to be smashing it, right?
I got into weird stuff because I was. Not weird stuff, but I played cricket. I was in the first 11 from fourth form because I was in the same year as Dan Vettori, so I was tight with him. We played cricket together from the age of 10, pretty much. First 15, I was handy at rugby. What
position were you in rugby?
Open side.
Wow.
Yeah, but I played number 8, but open side because we had another open side in the team. But that was my go-to.
Is that surprising? What position? You seem really surprised by that
for some reason. I had fullback in my head.
No, I tried. I couldn't. I just like getting down and dirty in the forwards. I just couldn't. Backs was just a bit boring for me. But I got into weird stuff. Like I really liked debating because I found that a really good way. And this sounds terrible. You could get away with bullying people in debating with your words. And I remember just loving it because I was in fifth form and I was like, one of the teachers there recommended that I do debating, and I was like, oh, I don't know about that. And it's like, you can say I'll do whatever you want. Like, when you rebut them, you can just go for them personally if you want. Rodney Hamill was his name. And I was like, are you serious? I'm pretty sure he went off script on that. And so one time I just laid into this girl and said, go back and crawl under your thesaurus and die, because no one knows what the hell you're talking about. Just went full noise.
Strong.
Because when it's a typical debating team, I think she was from Sacred Heart or something, it's got a bad rep, debating, as the kind of nerds who just bore the shit out of you. So I just went full attack, like personal attacks. I went full Trump. I went full Trump. I went full Trump on them, and they'd start crying and stuff. And then I remember Rodney Hamill pulling me aside and goes, and he used to talk like, yeah, it was very funny. You probably went a bit hard there though, Mike. And I remember in seventh form we went to like the Nationals in Rotorua or something, and I think I choked on that one. But I enjoyed that kind of stuff, which was weird, and I liked acting as well. I was in the school production. Lady Windermere's fan.
Okay.
I was Lord Windermere.
Yeah. So a triple threat. You got your sport, you got your acting, you got your debating.
Yeah, that's classic head boy material.
Yeah,
no, it makes sense.
Kind of fell into that, yeah. And then, but yeah, I don't think I was the traditional-ish kind of head boy.
Yeah, were you a controversial head boy?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
We had a great thing at St. Paul's, and when Jeremy was there, he did it as well, and he would attest to it. We had a school review, where the students wrote a series of skits taking the piss out of the school, the teachers, and everything, and no rules. You could do whatever you want. Like in our year, this sounds bad. We recreated the Once Warriors whole program.
It's a tough theme to take on.
No, but we replaced everyone with teachers, and the chemistry teacher is Mike Shaw, who was a tough guy, like yells a lot, blah, blah, blah. And he had a lab assistant called Bev, and we turned Bev into, like, it was loose, and we could do whatever we want and say whatever we want, and the teachers would love it. Students would love it. And it was a really kind of good, and I really liked that about St. Paul's. They could actually laugh at themselves. But after about a few years, a new headmaster came, and it was all called off, and because apparently some teachers got upset.
Did you, was Tihoy there?
Yeah.
Did you do Tihoy?
Fuck yeah, I loved that place. That's probably I never thought about sending my kids to private school, because I don't know, we live in the North Shore, and there's a good school there, and I don't see why I'd send them there. Only way I would is to send them to Tihoy, because that is 6 months of pretty amazing. When you're 14, you're such a little shit.
So just you get sent away to St. Paul's as a campus in Tihoy, which is in the central North Island.
Yeah.
And you disappear for 6 months.
Yeah,
and you're going to learn how to live.
Yeah, you
become a man. You leave a boy and you come back a man.
Well, you kind of come back and you're kind of forced into being a bit more compassionate, because you put into a house, an old logging quarters. So there's three bedrooms with 3 people in them. So there's 9 in your house. You have to start your fire to warm the water. It's got a wet back, so you can't have hot showers unless the person who's on fire duty gets up at 6 in the morning and lights the fire and gets it hot enough to have a shower. 2 people are cooks, so they have to cook for a week, and if they don't cook, you don't eat. Then you've got, if you leave the window open, the window just gets removed for a week, like off the hinges, gone. And in the middle of Tihoy and central North Island, in the middle of winter, if you haven't got a window, it's quite fucking cold. Then light bulb on, light bulbs disappears. So the tutors go around, just remove stuff. So you kind of learn that you've got to do your job, no matter how. If you hate the other 6 people in your house, or the couple of people in your house you hate, you've still got to get on with them to live. And as a 14-year-old, it's a pretty harsh lesson to learn.
We've got St. Paul's all wrong all these years. Maybe it's a good school of learning.
And you get to do things like live in snow caves. You go snow caving up Ruapehu. We sailed around Taupo. We kayaked Full James, which was fucking terrifying. Did some pretty cool shit. And you do learn, and you misbehave, you get sent on a stamp run, which is a 3K run to the end of the road, stamp your hand and run back again. Like punishments are like go swim in the hole, which was this big swimming hole. From the middle of winter, you had to get down to your undies and swim to the other side and back. And it was just kind of good. It's what 14-year-old boys needed at that time. And the only disappointing thing was that you got split with all your friends, because they just split the year in half. So you went to their Tihoy for 6 months, and you potentially didn't see some of your mates for a year. Because if they were in the second intake, then you didn't see them. That was the only bit of a shit.
And I guess it impacts on your sport, whether you go in the first 2 terms or the second 2 terms.
Yeah, so I was in the second term because of the cricket side of it, because both Dan and I were playing in the first 11 when we were 14, so we were in the first intake.
Yeah, so were you and Dan and Jeremy all in the same, like, were you all in the same group of friends?
Jeremy was a couple of years ahead of us, but his love and obsession for cricket was, we played with him, and he was hilarious. The most, because he obviously came from Wanganui after being expelled from Wanganui for very indiscretions around him. He tells the story best, but about him doing community service at a drug rehab centre and supplying drugs to a rehab patient. He tells the story better. He said it was the worst day of his life. But he turns up to St. Paul's, and it's like, but he was just so obsessed with cricket. It was pretty hilarious. And he used to board there. Before big games, I'm pretty sure he'd go and smoke weed and then jump on the roller and roll the pitch all night. The caretaker would just give him the keys to the racks, they were called, and you go and get the keys, and he would just roll the pitch to an inch of its life, so that when Dan bowled, he'd just fucking turn it square and turn it into this dust bowl.
He was just getting in the zone. He loves that security of knowing that he's doing that job, keeping it nice and smooth.
He was obsessed. It was absolutely obsessed, and it was a good cricketer.
Not the best cricketer at St. Paul's, though, Dan Vettori. Is that fair?
Not the best. No,
Mr. Neil Parlane?
Yeah, well, he was in the same team as us as well.
Not my favourite Parlane. Michael, if you're asking.
I must admit, if you'd asked me at school who's going to go further, it was always going to be Neil. He was a phenomenal batsman.
Still played 100 first-class cricket games.
Yeah,
Northern Districts, Auckland and Wellington.
Yeah, but I don't know what happened. But yeah. But he was at schoolboy level. He would just toy with people. He was such an arsehole. He would do it every game. In every big game would play against another big school. He would go out with his helmet on, face one ball, and then call on the 12th man for a cap, just to be a prick.
Shithousery, they call it in football. But if you could do it, great move. I'd do it every time if I could as well. And then he'd just score 100 and shake their hands, say thanks for the batting practice. Straight up and down, kind of arsehole manoeuvres, but Dan.
Yeah, how good was Vettori in high school cricket?
He was pretty good. He didn't even play the last year and a half because he made the New Zealand under-19s at 17 years old. So we didn't really see him for a lot of the year, and he didn't play for the school in the last year or so because he was playing Northern Districts B and Northern Districts, and so he didn't really. He was playing first class cricket at the age of 17.
But you maintained that tight friendship with him through the years.
He still went to school. We thought it was hilarious. They had a mufti day to raise funds for Dan's trip to England with the under-19s, and everyone was like, "Fuck off! I'm not fucking bringing in money for give to you to go to the under-19s, you piece of shit." Did he own Revert? Yes. Yeah.
Did you have any?
His brother? No, his brother. Him and Nick. Yeah, his brother. Because his brother was working for the breweries then, Nick Vettori.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I had nothing to do with that. No.
I was curious, Steve, that was the old Fat Lady's Arms, which became Revert.
I remember
which
Revert.
Then became Bahama.
Yeah, some great pokies at Revert. The old Big Kahuna.
It had like an age bracket of 20.
20 get into the pokey area.
Yeah.
And I'd
disappear. Into the bar.
Yeah, I'd go out for nights and I'd just disappear straight into the pokies area and I'll be gone.
Just feeding the pokies. Feeding the pokies.
So you leave St. Paul's and then we've got in our records that the Beige Brigade was founded in 99. So how long out of school was 99?
So that was 3 years out of school. So it actually started. Dan went on another tour to England and on an age group. It might have been that under-19s tour actually. And he came back with Bruce Edgar's beige kit that he bought at an auction in England, and he bought it and said, "You'd be the only one stupid enough to wear this." And so it was a full Adidas, long sleeve, skin tight, still had Bruce Edgar's name in it. And I remember wearing it to a few games, and Paul Ford and I were hanging out quite a lot, going to games and just yelling abuse at people through a megaphone, which is another story I'll tell you later. We got a trespass order from Basin Reserve. And so I'd wear these to the games, and people were just like, and I was still at university, and they were like, "Fuck, where'd you get that from? Fuck, that's awesome." It was like the old 84. And we thought, "Oh, fuck." And then we thought, "Oh, fuck, we might as well make a few." You're at university. I had plenty of time on my hands, and I went down to Spotlight in Christchurch and bought them out of beige and tan material. Had a friend who was a seamstress or whatever who was in design school at Canterbury, and she made the pattern for us, and then we just started sewing them ourselves. And fucking horrendous. Like, they were so bad. You can imagine two kind of 20-year-old guys trying to sew shirts. We could get all the panels together, like the front panel, back panel, side panels. It was the collars and up on the arms that we really struggled. So we basically paid our friend to do the arms and the collars, and we'd do the panels. And we sold them for $20 to our mates. So I think we made 20. Took us about fucking 3 months. And then, more and more people wanted to buy them, and it started to kind of pick up a bit of momentum. And my mate who I started it with, he was just over it by then. He didn't love cricket as much as I did. His name was Hoggy. He regrets it to this day. Paul Ford came down to stay down in Canterbury. He was like, he goes, "Oh man, I'll take it on with Lane." And Hoggy's like, "Oh yeah." He goes, "I'll buy you a half off you." Not that we had a company. He goes, "I'll buy you a half kind of IP share. How much you got in your pockets?" And like Paul had like $13 or something, and he goes, "I'll take it." So they took the $13, and then after that, Paul and I got some little old ladies in Hamilton to make them, and we forked out, got a loan or whatever, and got 100 made, sold like that. And then we went on tour to Australia. That was the one where Shane Bond came out of nowhere and cleaned them up, and we got into the finals with Africa. And we toured there, and we were there for 2 weeks, and that's where we kind of started to get a bit of media, because we got a big group of guys together, all in beige. We were the only Kiwis there, so it was the only colour they could get, and we came back, and it just exploded from there. And then we contracted another, but we tried to keep it. It's one of those things. It's like the ACC. It's kind of, we never started it to make money. We started it to do it with our mates, and to this day, we spent all the money on tickets for our mates, going around the world watching games. We bought the underarm ball, so we've got the underarm ball.
Is that really the underarm ball?
It's one of the two. Right. It is one of the two. It's the backstory to that one. We've got Richard Hadley's car. He won in 1986.
Wow.
The Alfa Romeo. So we spent it on just shit.
So who's we? Is this you and Paul?
Yeah,
so
we started Beige Brigade Limited. Yeah, so we started, but the idea is we didn't want to ever pay any tax. So
the Beige Brigade. Did you coin that phrase, or was it around back in the 80s? Or
no, we coined it. Yeah, because obviously the Barmy Army, and then we like Beige Brigade. And it was great for us because we said it's all about passion, not fashion.
I remember all this stuff.
Yeah, and it was great because and again, New Zealand Cricket, we approached them. This is a great story. The first $100 we made, we sent to New Zealand Cricket, to Martin Snedden, with a note with $100 from the Beige Brigade, and we said, "This is who we are."
As a 21-year-old,
piece
Mike Lane,
of shit, piece of fucking.
You've just had this idea to do these beige uniforms.
And we're like, "This is who we are. This is what we're doing."
Yeah.
We're a group of fans. Beige Brigade. It's about passion, not fashion. We're bringing back the beige. Blah blah blah. Sent it to Martin Snedden. I think we had a couple of snide comments like, "Here's our $100. Our first $100 we made. Please use it wisely. I.e., don't spend it on any shit marketing campaigns like the Madcaps or other forced fan groups."
The Madcaps?
Yeah. They other forced fan groups, because they didn't quite understand, this was generated by the fans, and that was so great about it. And got a letter back from him talking about how much money they had invested in the Black Caps brand, because they'd just gone for the Black Caps then, and how... the beige is in the past, and they've invested in the future here, blah blah blah.
Like a serious response.
Yeah, serious response, and saying we're not interested in engaging in any sort of partnership or blah. We're like, we didn't ask for one. Firstly, motherfuckers banked the check. They banked the $100. Don't worry about that. But then after that, we're like, okay, we're on our own. We're just going to do whatever we want, and they'd do cricket awards. We'd do the Beige Brigade awards.
Can I just jump in on that real quick? Because how cool? I don't know how cool it was. I was trawling YouTube. Like TV3 took the Beige Brigade Awards seriously and did a story on it.
I know, and they hated that, but they never really embraced it either. It was weird. It was kind of like they saw it as an attack. I don't know, but we never, like the ACC, we're fans. We're probably their biggest fans, and we're the biggest platform for just fandom. And the same with the Beige Brigade. And then New Zealand Cricket started to get wind of it when we toured England, and Paul and I went. And loads of mates were on their OE over there. We took 300 shirts and suitcases and sold them like that at Lord's. Like, funded our trip, sold them for like 30 or 40 quid each, cash. I was walking around with a bum bag full of so much money. Like,
that's got to be a great experience. That's got to be a great feeling, right? Knowing that you're onto something. Yeah. Like, is that one of the moments where you're like,
and looking around at Lord's and seeing you couldn't see any black shirts, only saw beige shirts. And we're like, fuck, this is awesome. This is cool. But then obviously we came back, and New Zealand Cricket and their shirt sponsor at this time was W Star, whatever that was. obviously saw that as an opportunity. And so the marketing manager of New Zealand Cricket called us in for a meeting. Guys, got some good news, fellas. We're bringing out a beige shirt. We're like, oh yeah, making it in China and selling it for $20. Because at this stage we made all our stuff in New Zealand, so we weren't making any money. They're costing us $40 to make, and we were selling them for $60. We didn't. It was stupid of us, but and they thought it was a great idea. And I just walked out of the meeting. I just went, I don't need to talk to you guys anymore. You guys have lost the fucking plot. And they brought out their own beige shirt, the W Star ones, which in the end, like, people didn't really know. Like, grandma doesn't know, or your auntie doesn't know that it's not Beige Brigade. You know, they just think it's... And at the end, looking back on it, it's good because you see beige in the crowd. We know that was us. It wasn't New Zealand Cricket who started that. And then, the following year, they played that first T20 International against Australia at Eden Park, and they decided to play in beige. And their press release was just so arrogant in the fact that they're going to play in beige, obviously just because they want to make their merchandise and wants to make the shirts so they can sell them. We knew that. They at least given a hat tip to the fans for the last 3 or 4 years who had gone to games in beige, bought beige. It didn't need to be us. All it needed to be was a hat tip to the fans who had been wearing beige for so many years. Instead, it was a hat tip to the players of the 80s. I was like, fuck off, you pieces of shit. So Paul and I were like, right, okay, let's grenade the shit out of this then. And we got a pallet of Lion Brown from Lion Nathan, and we went to all the players' clubs, all of their clubs. So, like Lancaster Woolston for Chris Cairns, Fraser Tech for Dan Vettori. And we just said, look, we've got a pallet of piss here. You need to put some pressure on your international player to grow the best moustache or hairdo for this 80s match against Australia. So all of them were just giving their players shit. Like Vettori was getting shit, and Astle reluctantly grew a moustache, and Stephen Fleming had a moustache, big curly moustache, and they just hijacked it completely with this moustache. And then Hamish Marshall turned up with the afro. And all of a sudden it was about the afros and the moustaches, and all about our promotion of that. And
that's quite unique thinking, going to the clubs to put pressure on the players with the pellets of piss. Is that a Mike Lane original?
Yeah, because the clubs don't ever see their players. They don't play for them. And the clubs, a pellet of Lion Brown for your India function, that's worth someone who knows Vettori, who knows his mate, to give him a call and go, you better grow a fucking moustache. Yeah, because there's a pellet of piss on the line. And they're like, okay.
Well, that's genius, because these guys that come through the clubs, it's those elder statesmen at the clubs who have the really strong relationships, and they look up to them and they owe them favours. So if they're leaning on them to do something, then So
it was great. And it was really satisfying grenading that, because we knew why they'd done it, and it was done because... But it was great to get the headline, and we've got the headline in the Don Post back in beige. It had a big picture of Hamish Marshall, and it was always it's next to the letter of Martin Snedden's letter saying we'll never go back to beige. So we were like, a little bit of satisfaction for Paul and I there. We're just like,
is Lion Brown the best beer in New Zealand?
I wouldn't say it's the best beer. I think I've got some mates who swear by it. It's a very Wellington beer, isn't it? Are you a fan of Lion Brown?
No, I was just curious.
Nah, but we adopted it. We adopted it because it was the underdog. And its branding was brown and beige.
Of course.
And it kind of fitted with the brand. It was an unassuming underdog of a brand. So that's why we adopted Lion Brown. I also just want it on record. I was given a Beige Brigade. It's about the passion, not fashion, for my 21st birthday. Oh, nice.
Oh, nice, bro.
In 2003?
That would be That would be one of the originals. Yeah, most of them are. This is the problem. We cocked out the sizes so badly.
Yeah, I think he did, because I remember getting it. And it was an XL, I thought, this is...
Well, this funny thing is, and this is, I could probably tell this story, but at Christmas time, Christmas it really took off. We were taking hundreds and hundreds of orders, and it was just Paul and I stuffing these courier bags, like 3 days before Christmas. We had floor to ceiling bags. We're smashing beers, and we're throwing like empty beer cans and bottles into the bags and stuff. Like, it was pretty funny. And we had a contract called the GC contract. So if you're going to put this shirt on, make sure you're a good cunt and all this. And we were throwing all this, and then we ran out of certain sizes. And we were like, what are we going to do?
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So it'd be like what does that one say? Large, and I have a medium, and I was like, just whip the size out, on the top of the collar and just bip it in. Yeah, so you probably got one of those.
Yeah,
sorry,
that explains a lot.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
I can send you another one. But the good thing, look, the beige stuff, like I say, it's just a good fun, a good release for us. We spent every single cent that we made. We've sold over $1 million worth of merchandise
Wow.
over the years. But,
So we're going to get into your sort of working career. The Beige Brigade is like a hobby on the side.
yeah.
It was ticking $1 million
Yeah.
in merchandise. Was there ever any thought that would be a full-time
Yeah,
gig?
there was actually. There was a while when I got back from overseas. For a while there, we wanted to see what we could do in terms of turning it into a media platform for podcasting and articles, and turning it into a bit of a cricket. But it was only related to cricket really, but getting into sports content, and we kind of dabbled with it for a while, but then some other stuff came along. I got distracted again because we tried to turn that into a bit of more of a media platform. I think Paul wrote for Cricket Info because Paul's a journo as well, qualified journo, but now he's gone working for the devil. He does comms now.
Dark side.
But he was writing articles for Cricket Info. The BYC podcast was actually going on Cricket Info as well. It's going out on all the podcast catches. And we thought maybe there's some future in content, sports content, but we just didn't really have the backing to see it through. And also, it was always a hobby, and it was kind of hard turning your hobby into something a bit more than that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, and we're still spending on stupid shit. Like, we can't go to a charity auction dinner without buying something fucking stupid, like whether it's Maradona's jersey or like the underarm ball or just stuff. Like Paul's house is just it's a whole room full of crap we've purchased. We've got this great photo of Bill Brown and Walter Hadley signed by them both. New Zealand's first test against Australia and in New Zealand at Basin Reserve. We've got all these. We should have our own museum to put it in because we've just spent it all back into just stupid dumb stuff that we thought was funny.
Before we jump into professional, where did that love of cricket come from? Just playing?
Just playing, really.
Watching
yeah.
and
because of weird sport cricket. And we recently did a thing where we interviewed a few of the players recently with the ACC talking about it's a funny game played by quite weird and funny people because it's so individual, yet you're in a team and you spend way too much time either on your own or with a group of people. Because, like, you think about batting, bowling, it's very individual. But you got 5 days in a row where you're doing the same thing, or or standing in the field. You might not even touch the ball. So it's played by quite strange people who've got quite strange sense of humours, and I think that's what's quite unique about cricket. Is it's so weird. Like, think about trying to explain the game to an American who's never seen it before, kind of thing, and then it's weird. But I think that's what develops the strange characters out of it. Your Mark Richardsons of the world are just weird, strange people. Even Shane Warne, he's not normal. Flintoff, all these, both of them, there's real characters that come out of cricket that you don't quite see, I don't think, in other sports as you do so much in cricket.
It's so true. I did 4 years in America, and that just hits home. I remember complaining about baseball being a bit fucking boring, and then I was trying to tell them about cricket, and I was like, well, there's these test matches, and they go 5 days sometimes, and they end in a draw, and no one wins. And I was like, yeah, when I say it like that, it sounds sounds pretty shit, but it's really good.
Because I was bagging on baseball as well about how boring it was, but I quite like the fact that you're still in the game right up until the final. You could be 5-6 down, but you can get those in the last play of the game. You know what I mean? I quite like that about baseball. You're always in with a chance. Whereas
Test you're still in, but for a draw, like you could have a really slim chance of getting a draw.
And I just played it. And I just played it and I had just made really good friends while playing it. People like Dan and Jeremy.
Did you do any club cricket during uni or anything? Or
I dabbled in it, and I played club cricket in England when I went over for a year after school. But it just took up too much time, and it wasn't really a career option. It kind of was and it wasn't. If IPL was around and stuff, you'd probably, kids can look at that and go, I could be a millionaire. I could actually do something. Back then it was like, just became a pain in the ass in the weekends because you'd take your entire weekend. It's not like a rugby game where you can punch out a couple of hours and then sink some piss and then go out to town. Cricket was draining, man. You turn hungover at 9 a.m. at Galloway Park and you're like, oh, fuck.
It's a good Hamilton reference.
Yeah, and then just be punished all day in the punishing heat and then then coming back and do it the next day. And as a youngster, you're playing against guys in their kind of 30s. You could tell, and I was terrible at sledging because I'd be like, because our first 11 at school would play in the senior club competition there. We played in the, and obviously we'd play dudes in their 20s, 30s, some dudes in their 40s, real battle hardened, and we're like these fucking young punks. And I remember just coming on a Saturday and just being on the slips and going, man, what the fuck are you doing here, man? Like, seriously, we're here, we're mates, we're at school. They're making us come here. You are volunteered. You must hate your family. You must hate your life. Like, what else you got? Surely you got other things to do on the weekend. You can see these guys go, you shut the fuck up. Just going on and on. Like, yeah, it would have been terrible to play. And people like Parlane, he was worse than me. And then you had Dan, and then you had Jeremy. But then Parlane would come out and hit 250, and then they'd be like, you mother. It's probably where our reputation came from for being pricks, arrogant pricks.
I remember going through a bit of a range of emotions with cricket. It's like, because I used to play when I was younger, and it was like, like you say, it's a whole day, it's a big sacrifice. And I was like, shit, good on the parents, they'd always take me to cricket, and it would be a whole day, and I'd sit there and they'd watch. And I'm a dad now to two young kids, and I'm thinking, like, it's actually, if your son's playing cricket, Dad would get a little deck chair and he'd have his chili bin and he'd have a few snacks and he'd have a book and he'd sit there in the sun. I'm like, that sounds like a pretty good day, to be fair.
Totally. Don't get into coaching. Do not get into coaching. I coached my 5-year-old son's team 2 or 3 years ago. Never again. Like, trying to teach young kids how to play cricket, like 5-year-olds, trying to teach them overarm and how to play shots and it's so unnatural to try and explain anything to do with cricket to a 5-year-old. So they all just ended up with the cones on their heads, he whacking his stumps over, threatening to punch me in the balls. And I was just like, fuck this. Like, I had all the parents, all hung over, drinking coffee on the sideline while I babysat like 12 kids and just started yelling at them. It's not good. I wouldn't recommend it.
So on our sort of research that we've been doing, working through your career history, there's the normal ones you'd expect. There's a bit of promotions and marketing for ZM, a bit of work for Sony, I understand. The one that stood out to us, we've traditionally been a football podcast, so the Between Two Beers base is very football based. 2009 to 11, you were the senior operations manager at the FIFA Club World Cup, which, Shay, I understand you were at as well. What was your role, Shay?
Yeah, I was the team administrator for Hikari United FC, who were a Papua New Guinea club who upset Waitakere United. Danny Robinson, one of our former guests, chucked one in the final in Port Moresby, and this plucky group of Pacific Islanders found themselves heading to club football's richest tournament in Abu Dhabi. On the way, we had a camp in Qatar. We were at the Aspire Academy, which is a pretty significantly impressive sporting facility, and we were there the day that FIFA announced that Qatar were hosting the World Cup in 2022, which was pretty cool. But yes, we went to this tournament, which it turns out you were involved in. One of the things that I was really interested in, so the team lost the qualifying game against, I can't remember who it is. It was a
local Al Jazeera team, I think.
Yeah. And then had been on quite a strong leash leading up to the event. And I recall frantically having to try and arrange the flights with FIFA Travel back to Port Moresby that evening, because when you get eliminated from a FIFA tournament, you're basically out the next day. When I came down for breakfast the following morning, there were players in various states of intoxication, hangover, remorse, a couple MIA, and I remember thinking,
Papua New Guinean teams not traditionally known for their drinking.
That's a dangerous place.
Well, yeah, it was the leadership of the team was very very faith based. They were quite upset, and they were on the first flight out. So I was basically left with a squad of 23 pissed up Papua New Guinea and Solomon Island and Fijian players.
God.
And I was just thinking, fuck me, like, it's a dry country. Kind of.
Yeah, and if you're within the hotel, but as soon as you cause a ruckus or a scene, you're in trouble.
Yeah, there was a few rakai that evening. So I just wondered, from an LOC perspective, whether anything was reported back to HQ or whether we kept that.
I do remember, it's always the first team to get eliminated. There's always trouble because, and I remember, I think it was even the local team the next year, which Auckland knocked out in the first round because the local team plays the Oceania team first up. I do remember actually something about that. I do remember some, but the worst one was next year, the African team. The next year, they were worse, way worse, and they still had a game to play.
Yeah, okay.
So there was. I think you got upstaged by those guys.
Thankfully.
But
So what did your role look like? A senior operations manager.
Right. This is another great story because I was in London. I was in London for about 4.5 years, and I actually opened the Beige Brigade office in London, and we ran tours to Beerfest, Running of the Bulls, La Tomatina, the Rugby World Cup when it was out there. We took 400 people to 400 or 500 people to that quarterfinal at Cardiff, which we lost.
Oh, good.
It was insane. It was fine though, because I didn't get any tickets to the semi-final because I didn't have enough money. But I ran these tours out of Covent Garden. We had an office.
Hang on. So you didn't get tickets banking on them losing the quarterfinal?
No. I couldn't afford. Like, this is how dodgy it all is in the UK with the tour companies, and it's not dodgy unless you just got to pay up front. Those 450 tickets I got for the quarterfinal at Cardiff were all from a scalper. Purchased a week before the quarterfinal. I met him in a pub. I shit you not, a gym bag full of cash, and I paid him. And
many questions.
And he gave me the tickets, and I didn't ask any questions. Paul the Saffa was his name. He was just known as Paul the Saffa, and he would always come through. He set a price, and you pay that.
Amazing.
People were everywhere, like all over the stadium. There was 10 here, 10 there, 10 everywhere. But yeah, because can you remember that story a while back about that tour company that everyone turned up to the game and there was no tickets?
Yes.
Can you remember that?
Yeah.
That's because they didn't pay him. It was him. It was that same scalper. He's like, they didn't pay me. I'm not turning up to a game an hour before the game to give them tickets and then get the money. You said, if you front up, give me the money, I'll give you the tickets. So that all stemmed from that. But anyway, but I had an option to get a few hundred tickets to the semi-final, but it was double the price, and I didn't have that money available to do that. So I just called it and said, we're only doing tours to the quarterfinal, which in the end was...
So when they lost the quarterfinal, were you thinking...
Yeah, I was like, oh, well, it was carnage. Anyway, so I was running these tours, and I was doing a contract work for a company over there
That's
called...
such an amazing game of roulette, by the way.
Oh, totally is.
Ticket roulette. That's incredible.
Is another... I worked for another company called Ignition, which was a sports marketing company, and I'd do contracts for them. They had some really cool clients like Vodafone, and part of their contract was activating the Vodafone's Formula One division and their sponsorship of the Vodafone.
I was going to ask whether Formula One was the one that got you to Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, it was. And we worked with Lewis Hamilton in his first season because he was with Vodafone Mercedes or something, I think then, but Vodafone was a big sponsor of his. And we did a couple of activations for them. So in between tours, I'd work for them. And then it was actually, we did a go-kart race with Lewis Hamilton around Brunswick Square, and I did the course. And I was just a Kiwi making shit up. And I made a corner way too tight, and he took the corner, lost it, and put the cart into a tree, snapped the axle of the cart, and he just won the Canadian Grand Prix. So the headlines went around the world, and Vodafone loved it because it was a launch of their Vodafone Internet. And it said Lewis Hamilton can win a Formula One but can't drive a go-kart. And that was my fault.
Nice.
But we, that same company had quite good ins with Bernie Eccleston's Formula One management. They'd just signed Abu Dhabi as the 2009 Grand Prix. This was probably back in 2006, maybe, 7. And it was an outlandish thing that Abu Dhabi wanted to do. They wanted to launch and announce the Formula One in Abu Dhabi with the biggest gathering of Formula One drivers outside of a Formula One, to do a street parade and race and donuts and stuff and a big gala dinner. And I've never been involved in anything like it. We went to Abu Dhabi, and it was run by the Crown Prince, and the budget was God knows what. They flew in all the teams, so all of the Formula One teams and their pit crews, their cars, everything. They set up garages for them. They flew over the Manchester City field designers to do all the painting of the grass with the Etihad logos and Formula One logos.
Too much money, eh?
Oh, it was insane. And the mate of mine, who I ended up going and working with FIFA with, who was running the show. He was show calling the whole thing, and obviously would send the cars out one by one, and they'd go up the Corniche of Abu Dhabi, do a donut at the end in front of the royal family, and then come back again. And he's calling them out, and no one listens to anyone in Abu Dhabi. If you're a local, you do whatever you want. People are crossing the road, and the Formula One car's coming at 200 kilometres an hour, and we're like, oh, fuck it, whatever. But then there was a flyover of a A380 coming over with Abu Dhabi, and so on the radio I could hear Mark, my friend of mine, Mark, going, yeah, just put that in, put our holding pattern, just one more lap. And then we were like, hey, Mark. And he goes, yeah, did you just put an A380 into a holding pattern? He's like, yep. But then we had that come over, and then we had F-16s and a Chinook come over. It was fucking insane. And then they had a big gala dinner in Emirates Palace, which is this billion-dollar hotel. It was so surreal, and all the Formula One drivers were there, all of them. They had a big gala dinner that night, and all the old Formula One winners were there. They all flew in on their private jets. It was like a world I just didn't not know or experience ever. And
you've not seen money until you've been to the Middle East, or excess. It's just crazy, some of the stuff that happens.
They just need to impress. They needed to impress, and they certainly did. Like, everyone was just like, holy shit. And so we put all that operations on, the street race, the gala dinner, all the accommodation, all the logistics, everything. And then a few months later, I think Abu Dhabi government won the rights for the FIFA Club World Cup. And obviously they were like, how the fuck do you put a football tournament on? How about those guys who came over and did that Formula One event? Yeah. So Mark, then he got offered the job as the director, operations director of, and he just rang me. And he just goes, have you ever worked on a football tournament? I was like, nah. And he goes, would you like to? And I'm like, yeah, okay. How hard can it be? And he goes, nah, it's a bit of logistics, you'll be fine. I was like, sweet, when is it? He's like, next month. And I was still in London, but the GFC had hit then, and we were looking for options to come home anyway, or closer to home. And
were you with your wife at this point?
Yeah. And we were looking at, like, because we weren't quite done with travel. We kind of we were looking at Singapore, Hong Kong, that kind of one flight home. And then Abu Dhabi came up, and it was pretty good money, tax-free.
Lucrative.
Very lucrative. And it was like, okay, how hard can it be to run a football tournament?
I'm interested in this. How did you find dealing with FIFA and that?
Oh, my God, okay. So that's another story. So go out there and nothing is ready. Nothing is prepared. Like, they got a heap of money, but...
You should have come and hung out with me in Papua New Guinea for 2 years.
It was insane. It was insane, man. And, like, we had these two stadiums that were half built or too old. We had to tear up both fields and relay them. And then all the training facilities we had to just completely revamp. It was insane. But
what was your actual job title, and what did you have to do?
Operations. So I basically...
Did they just drop the manual on your desk and go, do this?
This thing is FIFA. They're fucking sneaky, man. They're sneaky motherfuckers. Because the only manual they give you is the broadcast manual, because that's all they care about. So they'll dump this Bible on you. It's like thud. And you're like, what's that? No, this is the broadcast manual you need to follow. Because there could be a nuclear fallout. They do not care as long as it goes out to broadcast. We had so many backup generators. It was insane. There could have been a meltdown. The whole world would have gone down, and the broadcast still would have gone out. That's all they cared about.
So good.
We said, have you got a traffic, if you've got a manual around team protocols, travel, accommodation, training facilities, and they're like, no, you present to us and we'll give you feedback. So all you end up just presenting to them. They'll never put anything in writing. They'll call you, or you do it in person. So we flew to Zurich probably 6 or 7 times to present, and then they would just give feedback. And I remember just leaving going, why don't we just do whatever the fuck we want, and then just deal with the consequences? And in the end, that's what we did. Because they would just argue about how big a coach would be or how many drivers was, and we're like, this is insane. But they'll never put it in writing, ever. Nothing. Nothing was ever in writing.
This is really refreshing for me to hear.
Yeah. I hear that the headquarters at FIFA, there's kind of like a room set up to almost to commit crimes. It's like there's no transmissions coming in and out.
Yeah, it's great. We got the tour the first time we were there, and they got some little lackey to take us on a tour and try and impress us. And it's an impressive building. You've been there.
Yeah.
It's like, it's 2 stories high and about 4 stories below the ground. Up on the hillside, there's a couple of massive artificial courts, a gymnasium and all sorts.
Did you go to the snow room?
I didn't go to the prayer room I went to.
Oh, yeah.
And all that. And the wellness the wellness room. But then they went to the executive committee meeting room.
Yeah.
And this little lackey's like, this is the executive committee room. You're like, and there's this fucking door like foot thick, like titanium steel, and it is like something in a Dr. Evil. Like there's a big table in the middle, and there's terraces up the sides where all the translators go to live translate for different languages and whatever of what know all the different Exco committee members. But then they're like, this is a fully secure room where no electromagnetic devices work, no recording devices, no cell phones. And we were like, why would you want that? Whereas what they talk about is extremely confidential. And it was like, and like, remember one of the guys in our thing, because we're all Kiwis and Aussies and one English guy, and he was like, what, so you can sell each other TV rights for $1? And this guy's face was like, no. It was like, why else would you need a titanium thick door to just, what's the secrecy? It's very confidential stuff they talk about. We're like, okay, mate, whatever. Okay, keep telling yourself.
Did you give
that.
them Saffa Pete's number?
Yeah, I should have beat Paul the Saffa.
Got it all wrong.
Paul the Saffa got done. This is just as well. This podcast is a long form. It's Paul the Saffa is a great story in the because I did some work at the Germany World Cup.
Oh, I was there as well.
Yeah, I was running tours for the Aussie guys there for Aussie. And it was a fucking nightmare. Aussie fans are punishing. But he was over there. It was pretty clever because he would have a dummy room, hotel room. So all of his scalpers, he had scalpers everywhere. They would all have a dummy key to a dummy room that had dummy tickets and dummy cash. Because all the cops would do, they'd arrest you. You go, you're scalping, come here, lock you up. Where's your hotel? Give us your hotel key. They'd go into the hotel room, they'd put a couple of €1,000 in the safe and some tickets. And then they'd smack him on the back of the head and send him to the airport. Meanwhile, in the next door room, there's like €500,000 of cash. And like, they just have this sacrificial. If you got arrested, they just had a sacrificial room where you gave them the key, and the cops just took all that and thought they'd dealt with it and would send them to the airport. They just had all that. It was next level operation. The scalping. It's multi-million-dollar operation. But yeah, there you go. That's a bit of a side note, that one. But yeah, FIFA, interesting bunch.
So it was just the one tournament, or was it two tournaments?
It was 2 years. It's back there actually now. It was 2 years. So first year was Barcelona, took it out, and they had all their heavy hitters. They had Messi and Puyol and Iniesta. They were all. It was a fucking pretty rock star team. And was that now? That was the second year actually.
Yeah, that was when we were there.
Were you there?
I was there 2010.
Yeah. Was it Real Madrid was there when maybe?
Oh, could have been. I think
it was Real Madrid because the second year when it was Barcelona, the only reason I remember is because the Auckland City team, there was a double header. There was a double header at Zayed Sports City, and it was Auckland versus the
TP Mazembe.
Yeah, that's it, TP Mazembe. And then it was Barcelona versus a South American team, and it was a double header, so they were sharing kind of hallway. So there was and so Barcelona and Auckland City were basically in next door changing rooms. And I'm a fan of football, but I don't really buzz out on players or stuff like that, So when you're kind of making sure Messi's gone to the room or was out of the bus or whatever, I didn't really think much of it until I told friends who love football, and he goes, "Oh my God, you mean Messi?" He's such a small, unassuming little chap as well. But it was hilarious. The Aucklanders finished their game, and they were all lined up outside of the Barcelona changing room with like autograph books, like kids. Yeah. And that's when I thought, fucking hell, okay. There's for guys who football is king, they're lined up to get like Puyol and Messi, all their, and just meet their heroes. And that was that was some fucking massive buzz for them.
Yeah.
And it was kind of, for me, it was a bit of a reality check for me. Oh, okay. Because I was just getting about my business. I wasn't massively into it.
I mean, seeing Messi in 2009, 2010, that's like peak Messi.
Yeah,
so you've done well there.
Yeah, he was pretty amazing. He won Man of the Series. Like it was so easy for him, so easy for him. But it was an interesting time, and it was interesting living in the Middle East. I wouldn't go back. I don't think. I think I did 2 years of the FIFA World Cup, and then I worked about another 8 months doing production for concerts and stuff, which was fun. We brought out Snoop Dogg and Eric Clapton. And
how did you manage to service Snoop Dogg in Abu Dhabi?
Well, this is the problem. This is the thing.
That's a good question.
Quite easily, actually. Lebanese. That's what I'm going to say. But Snoop Dogg, they had to get a special exemption to get him in the country because you're not allowed in there with a criminal record. And obviously,
he couldn't come here, could he? Or did he come here?
I didn't think he could. Not sure. Yeah. I think he has, but he was great. He was a great dude. He was, Yeah. He was such a loose. Him and his entourage were just stereotypical American hip hop. Like their rider was hilarious. Like fried chicken, just heaps of fried chicken, heaps of like expensive vodka, heaps of chocolate. It was just
what sort of numbers is a Snoop Dogg entourage rolling?
He only had about. He only
said rolling.
No, he had about 10 or so. Oh. But that was like he had DJs and stuff and hype men who come out and stuff like that. But he was hilarious. His best thing about him was his merchandise area was called the Snooper Market, which tickled me. I thought that was
that's nice. Yeah. What other sort of? Because it's weird. It's a weird place where you kind of think it's not really. It is quite westernized when you go there.
Yeah.
So what other sort of artists are you bringing across?
Oh, they had Paul McCartney came out, Kings of Leon, Prince,
Beyonce, Guns N' Roses, Stevie Wonder.
Yeah, Guns N' Roses was hilarious. Guns N' Roses.
Are you reading these?
Guns N' Roses was hilarious because it wasn't Guns N' Roses, full Guns N' Roses. It was just Axl and a band, but he sung all the classics. It wasn't, but Slash wasn't there or anything.
Did he have the bike pants on?
He was not in great nick. This time he was not in great nick. He was coming off stage and sucking on the oxygen tank. We had oxygen tanks either side, and he was just like hard, and then back onto the stage. Yeah, it was impressive. It was impressive. But a lot of these were linked to the Formula One that was on there as well.
Such good war stories.
Yeah, they're pretty funny.
There's no easy seg here, but we're just going to go because Between Two Beers likes to touch on the light-hearted and the serious.
Yeah.
So there was a story relatively recently that, again, Dylan did on you. It was about your one in a million cancer battle.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to read a couple of pars because he put it really well, and then we can get into it. And it sort of opens. Mike Lane got a wee bump in the middle of his forehead last year. It wasn't angry like a pimple or itchy like a bite. It wasn't painful. It didn't hurt to touch. It just hung around like an uninvited yet harmless guest. It's a cyst, said his dad, also a doctor. It's a unicorn horn, said his 5-year-old daughter Pippa. We found that quite amusing at the time, says Lane. Then all of a sudden, it wasn't quite as funny. And then you later go on to say, it's quite funny, says Lane, not laughing, but you have this movie scene idea about what it must be like to receive the news you have cancer. But for me, it was just so matter of fact, maybe because I could see it coming. That's really well put, but talk about that experience.
Yeah, that was interesting. So that was 10 months ago probably now. So I had this bump on my head, which I didn't think much of it. Like, I played a bit of rugby. I've got a few battle scars on my head. And it was one of those things that was just kind of a bit of a lump that was growing on my forehead. And I just went to, and like the article says, my daughter was giving me shit about having a unicorn. It wasn't that big. It wasn't noticeable. Like, you wouldn't look at me and go, I've got a massive, it was just a little raised bump. Yeah, not a pimple or anything, not a mole. So it wasn't a mole or an angry mole. So I went to my GP and I said, can you cut this bad boy out? And the GP's like, shit, yeah, I cut that out. So he said, it looks like a cyst. I've cut plenty of cysts out. And then when he was doing it, this is what kind of peaked it. He was kind of scraping it out. It was on the top of my forehead, and he was opening me up, and he got it out, and I hear him just go, oh, there's some other stuff in here, and he just kept on taking more and more out of my head.
So you're consciously hearing that?
Yeah. He only gave me just a kind of local in my forehead.
But straight away that comment.
Yeah, that comment, I was like, oh, okay, it's not a cyst. And he's like, yeah, I haven't seen this before. I'll send it off to get tested. And as soon as he said that, I was like, okay, this doesn't sound overly good, but how bad can it be? And then a couple of weeks later, obviously you get the phone call from the nurse saying the doctor would like to talk to you about your results. And you're like, okay, you get rung and told positive news. So I went in and I kind of just wanted to get on with it. And he said, yeah, it's cancer. You've got a thing called a DFSP, which is a dermofibrosis sarcoma protrubian.
I wanted to get Stephen to pronounce that.
Yeah. It's a DFSP. It's very rare, but you need to go to a specialist immediately. And normally they're not very big. Normally they're found on the abdomen or the leg. Doesn't normally happen. It is a form of skin cancer, but it's not really a skin cancer in such that it sits on the outside of the skin. It's a flesh, one that sits in the flesh underneath the skin. And so I went to a specialist, and they're like, okay, they do this thing called Mohs surgery, which they take margins of the area, and they test it live, and they keep taking margins until the test is negative, that the cancer's gone. And I remember I spent the first day in surgery, and I was went in and out of surgery 3 times, and then the results came back, and they said, "Oh, you're going to have to come back on Monday," because that was a Friday. So I had 2 days in the weekend knowing that I was going to have to go back for more surgery, and I've got basically a hole in my head. And then went back and then did 2 more rounds, and still wasn't gone. And the cancer, it's like an octopus. It kind of stretches. It kind of got tentacles. So the tentacles can kind of go, and it was basically from the center of my head, and not great for a podcast, but I can show you the kind of circle. This is half the size it was. The tentacles kind of started spreading out, and most concern was the tentacles were coming down near my eyebrow and into my eye socket. So they got me into surgery the next day, and luckily they put me under for this part, but they basically took a 15 centimetre hole out of my forehead, took 2 mil off my skull as well, because the flesh had got into the skull. So they whipped 2 mil off my skull, and then I spent the summer, and luckily they got rid of all of it, except a little small part of it that I had to get dealt with later. But it was an interesting period, because you don't, from being told, all of a sudden, nothing else really matters in terms of your work can go fuck itself, all that kind of stuff. You don't really care. My job's to entertain people. I'm not saving lives, so I can live without it. But all of a sudden, everything becomes very clear about what you have to do. Right, what do I have to do to get rid of this, and how do I get rid of it? Right, okay, go to the doctor. Boom, what do I do next? Boom, what do I do next? What's the next step to get rid of this? And everything becomes very clear around what you need to do, and you don't. It's kind of funny. You don't get all emotional about it or anything, because you always see, like I said, the movie scenes of you've got cancer. Oh my God, I got cancer. I'm just going back and telling my wife, it's cancer, but I'm going to get rid of it.
You can deal with it.
I can deal with it. We can all deal with it. And so it's kind of weird. But then, I had 12, probably 8 weeks over summer with this gaping hole in my head, because they put this lattice in there that allowed the flesh to grow on it to fill the hole in again. So it had to remain open with a head bandage on, but I couldn't swim. I couldn't get hot or sweat, because the sweat would get bacteria in it, and then I'd get infected. That was the biggest risk. So it was a real shit summer. And then at the end of, I think, start of February, they put my thigh on my forehead, got rid of the remaining cancer at the top of my head, which was causing a bit of issue, and gave me a facelift, which was quite good. So it used to be 15, and it got it down to 7. So they basically put a split graft, made my head nice and tight, and then put my thigh on it. So yeah, that's what I've got there. So I've got a good little battle scar that basically looks like, if I could tell people what happened, I could say that I was either hit by a sledgehammer or a cricket ball. But I got the all clear about a month ago. I got a CT scan and a CAT scan, and it's all come back all clear. So I just have to have those every couple of years just to make sure it hasn't come back.
One of the reasons I think that you and your crew are so popular is you're so personable, and it seems like you've got lives that a lot of us like to think we have as well. Yeah, it seems like you're pretty well set up. You've got the job, and you've got the family, and you've got a good balance. And then you get news like that. You say you don't really, you just get on with it. But I mean, that's pretty serious stuff. Like, are there nights when you're lying awake processing it?
Yeah, I suppose there was. Yeah, I mean, every now and then it was a bit of a and obviously, I mean, I took way too much enjoyment out of making people feel awkward, because I had to wear, at one stage I had a bandana. I had so much bandaging on that I couldn't wear a hat. Because it was just too much. So
is that why you wore the beanie and some of the the champagne rugby stuff?
Yeah. Right. So I was a little bit self-conscious about it, but I had quite a big bandage, and it was quite a big lump here, so I had to wear bandanas, which is stereotypical kids can cancer kind of look like. But I had
Simmons.
Yeah, but I had to wear bandanas, and random strangers would just I'd be at a cafe and they're like, "Oh, going for the pirate look, are we?" And I just love just turning around and go, "Actually, it's cancer."
yeah, that's the best response.
It's so good. It's so good. And I used it way too many times, because I just felt first of all, shut the fuck up. You don't even what? Why are you commenting on random people's headwear? But then I just love just go, "No, it's actually cancer," but that's all cool. Next joke.
Yeah.
And then just watching them just go, "Oh."
Bro, sorry.
Yeah. And a girl at a pub took my hat off. How some girls I think it's hard case to take people's hats off and run away with them, and she took it off, and then obviously it was quite raw, and I didn't have any bandages on it, and it was just a big skin graft, and looked at her friend, I was like, classic gag, steal the hat from the dude with fucking cancer, and you could see them, and I love doing it. It's terrible, but just because those people were such assholes. But I don't know, I didn't dwell on it too much, to be honest, because I always knew I had something planned. This was the next evolution, was to get I suppose if I hadn't got the all clear, that probably would have put me in a bit of a tailspin, because that was at the end of that was where I was going to put the full stop on things after the scan. If they come back and say, like, yes, there's more, I'd be like, oh, fuck. I probably would have gone into a mild depression after that. But up until that point, I always kind of felt like the plan was coming together.
I feel like it's almost, this is getting pretty dark, I guess, but it's almost harder on the partner than you, because they're just worrying about what might be. You're just thinking, fuck this, I'll just get through it. I'll need this, but they don't really have that.
And the parents, like your parents.
Yeah, geez.
Like, and the kids, the kids are 8, 6 and 3. And like the 8-year-old, like, I'd go to school, and at one stage I had a vacuum dressing on my head, so I had looked like a cyborg. And it's in that article. I've got like a suction
with
thing.
the glasses on as well.
Yeah, and the suction on my head. And so for a while there, I'd wear that, and I'd just put the bandana over, and I'd go and pick up my kids from school. But there was still a tube coming out the side of my head. Mm. And my 8-year-old was terrible, because people would go, "Are you okay?" And he'd go, "He's got cancer." And I'll be like, "Oh,
it's good way.
And
Good way of addressing it.
Yeah, they get heavy, and I'm like, "Yeah, it's fine though. It's just the surgery."
Yeah.
And then that was pretty funny. They didn't really, they just drop it in every now and then, that made kind of the situations even worse. But
all right, we're just going to keep going, because we're going to come out the other side, but there's something else that I think we need to talk about, and it's important, and it's about mental health. There was another article a couple of weeks ago that you penned, which I thought was really strong, about your good mate Daz, who killed himself and took his life. And it's part of the initiative Hauraki took. They had the No Talk Day, which was about sort of encouraging Kiwi blokes to talk about their mental health. It's something that we've touched on in this podcast.
Yep.
And it's not until you lose someone, or you're aware of someone in your friend group, or it really hits you hard, and then you become so aware of it. I think that was really strong, what you wrote about being at the funeral and dealing with that. Yeah. How important is it for people to actually talk about the issues they're going through?
Look, I mean, I think it's more important that guys talk to each other more and hang out with each other more, and then, I mean, naturally your mate's not going to come out with it straight away that he's struggling mentally, but it's getting in regular contact with your mates, staying in contact with them, and just maintaining that contact, and then building up, so you're comfortable enough to talk about it. Because and we talk about this No Talk Day, it's about mental health, about raising awareness around suicide, just the shocking male suicide statistics, but also to catch up with your mates more, and whether that's a phone call or just going out for a beer, because guys are fucking useless at it. And what tends to happen, and it happens in my relationship, is the wife, girlfriend take over the social calendar, because guys are just fucking too busy doing work or whatever, or playing sport, whatever they're doing. They don't, and it's up to the partner. Goes, oh yeah, no, I've organised, we're having a barbecue over at Charlene's and blah blah blah, and you're like, yeah, okay, fuck, whatever, and you run with it. Next minute, you haven't seen any of your mates for 6 or 7 months, not through any fault of anyone else's, but you just don't, because guys are just useless at doing it, and it's just kind of resetting the fact that we actually do need to take control a bit more and go and catch up with mates and have a beer and just have an open conversation about, how are you, mate? How are you feeling? How's your work? Is everything all right? Just simple as that. And I mean, look, 9 times out of 10, most of your mates are going to go, yeah, man, sweet as, but thanks for asking, but fuck, it's all good. And out of the back of that day, I get heaps of phone calls from my mates asking if I'm okay. And I'm like, yeah, man, thanks for asking. Yeah. But it's kind of to know that people are kind of thinking about you or care about you, kind of. But yeah, the fact is that we just don't do it enough. And it's not necessarily, we need to go straight to the crux of it and say, hey, Steve, are you mentally okay? You look a bit depressed. It's about, I'll catch up with you once every couple of weeks, and then may notice that you're not quite yourself. But it's hard to even notice that if you're not seeing your mates
I feel like the culture, I think the positive, the culture is shifting a little bit.
Yeah.
I remember a guy in our football team 15 years ago came out and said he was depressed. And everyone was like, whoa, what is this? But more recently, especially in our close friend group, we've had a couple of people being able to open up with their group of mates.
Yeah.
Very unlike anything that we would do, but everyone was really comfortable with it. We dealt with it. We talked and made more of an effort, like you talked about catching up for coffees and meeting up, you know. So I feel like things are moving in the right direction,
totally,
and the message is getting through.
I don't think guys especially, it's like, just fucking harden up, mate. Just harden up, you pussy. What's fucking wrong with you? I think that's well and truly gone with this generation. It might still exist with some of the boomers. But yeah, you're right. It's good. And because I talked about it with Dylan in the article, it's like there's been such a big focus on mental health and talking and everything that, I mean, I was probably guilty of it, that I kind of ignored my actual physical health a little bit, you know, because I was like, and try not to ignore your physical health as well, because that's just as important as your mental health. It seemed like the focus had gone this way, and I was like, oh, fuck. But I like how people can talk about it now, and I really enjoy how the Pat can people be open about it. The Daz thing, that came out of nowhere as well, because I never knew he was even struggling with bipolar. And to learn that like most people did at the funeral was just like, fuck. I mean, how well do you know people? You know, everyone's got their own battles going on. Yeah, totally. I didn't even know. And then, you know, I was supposed to catch up with him for a beer, and, you know, maybe if I'd asked him, how are you, he might have, the slim chance he might have opened up, but he wasn't going to. But that's what you articulated so well in that article. You start putting the blame on yourself, and you're thinking, well, what could I have done? But realistically, it was something much bigger than that little interaction wouldn't have saved things. Yeah, totally. And his wife is amazing, Emily. Like, the way she just got up and spoke at the funeral was just put everyone at rest. It was like, oh, fuck, thank God. Because I think everyone was feeling the same. Like, what we've done, but no one could have done anything. It's a big thing, though, to open up to your mates. I mean, we had a conversation last year, Steve, you, me, and a friend of ours, Gavin, at a cafe where I was really on Struggle Street, and it was only at that point, I think Stevie might have even, I'm not going to look at him because I'm going to find it difficult, but I think he even eyeballed me and said, look, is everything all right? And I was like, no, I'm not. And he's like, okay, well, and we unpacked it as a friend group. And I think I listened just by pure serendipity, but I was driving somewhere and Slade McFarland was talking on No Talk. And I found that his words really resonated with me about being a former, you know, professional rugby player who struggled to adjust and adapt, and that whole psyche and mentality about just getting over who you are and being able to talk to people. It's just, I think, particularly for people that are maybe in our age bracket, it's still not super comfortable. It's still on the verge. The more people, prominent people as well, that come out and go, fuck, look, it's all right to be fucking down, or it's all right to be whatever. Like I had a little spell recently with our football team, like that Stevie's still battling to try and play for at 30 plus, with kids half his age. But I thought, fuck it, I'm actually going to do something. So I actually penned something on our little Facebook group and said, look, not feeling 100%. Yeah. This is just what it is. I just want to let you guys all know about it, because sometimes when you think you don't know what's going on with someone, I think it's really, really kind of important. Like a massive point for people to take on board. Particularly when you're so busy as well. Like if you got your job and you got your kids and got a partner or whatever, you know, everything just consumes you, everything until, you know, so you don't actually get a chance to just unwind and chat to your mates. Like I got together a bunch of mates, like long after talk day, and just got them all together, and they were like, thanks, man, fuck, we're just too useless. Like good mates like your groomsmen, like 3 of your groomsmen which you haven't seen in 3 years. It's like they were they're your tightest friends, and you're just pure fucking just, I don't know what it is. It's just guys being dicks, really, and just not being organised. You are right, yeah. Man, it's so useless at organising and getting things together. I think we do an all right job, though, Steve. Yeah. You get a podcast together. Like the amount of research you guys are doing here. I mean, you're an exception to the rule. Some of this is just work from. So you've done really well, because I haven't even got a Wikipedia page. How'd you get all that? I looked for it. I was trying to find your age. I couldn't find it anywhere. 42. There we go. All right. Well, let's pull you out the other side. So I'll loosely seg, because you're talking about bringing mates back together. Yeah. At Hauraki, it looks like you're on a real podcast journey. It seems like you're launching a lot of new shows, and you're getting the old band back together, Jason Hoyt and James McConey and Ben Hurley and things like that.
What do you think the future is of broadcasting and cricket and the ACC, and what direction are you heading?
Yeah, well, we've kind of not been forced into it, but we haven't got the rights this year. MediaWorks have purchased the rights to the cricket, so that is it's not forced our hand, but it's kind of made us think differently about how we're going to approach the cricket season. So we're looking at kind of podcasting, and we're always looking at, and even outside of cricket as well. So the look at sports entertainment, as I touched on earlier, look at Barstool Sports in America. I mean, that's pretty hardcore, Barstool Sports. I don't think we'll ever go that far.
The woman talking about sex podcast, right? Yeah, is just phenomenally popular.
Yeah.
What's the New Zealand equivalent coming?
Yeah. So we're looking at that kind of model, whereas they've got the rights to nothing. They basically second screen the kind of Super Bowl. They second screen Stanley Cup. They second screen World Series.
What's second screen? Sorry.
So basically, they will video themselves watching it. Yeah. But they've got a live ticker along the bottom with the score. So you're basically watching it, but you're watching with a bunch of mates on the screen. But you can just watch them if you want.
That's what you do with the ACC.
Yeah. But no official commentary, no official sound effects or anything like that. So
Right.
It's massive in the States. And also, their podcast suite, they're the fourth biggest. In August, they were the fourth biggest podcaster in the US. They were above ESPN, and they were, like, in terms of sports, all run by sports fans, kind of, but pretty much, and just psychotic kind of American sports fans. And we looked at that, and that's kind of where we want to go with the ACC. So as a sports entertainment platform, with a podcasting across various sports, we've got Mark Stafford, who's come on board as well from the TAB. So he does long form one-on-one interviews with sports people. So he's come on board, and he's got a show on Hodaki as well. So that's kind of what we found out with the ACC is we've got as far as we can this way in terms of our content and our audience. We're butting up against a wall here. We've got that audience there. We can't get any more by being any more outlandish or outrageous. You just can't. So that's why we are consciously bringing back the other way. And people like Mark Stafford brings that in with his long-form interviews with All Blacks and sports stars and Olympians. We bring the BYC podcast back with Dylan and Jason Hoyt, Paul Ford, who just want to talk cricket. They just want to talk. They just want to nerd out on cricket.
Expert analysis.
Yeah, just total nerd out on cricket. Then in the rugby side of it, Champagne Rugby, we're probably going to hopefully bring in people like Scotty and James McConey just to really nerd out on rugby, you know what I mean? Yeah. But then have the Agenda podcast, which is more ACC, covering all sports, runs off on a tangent, talking about childbirth for an hour, and then comes back to talking about Bowden Barrett having a daughter, you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. And then
you bring in the Wellington Phoenix with a couple of football guys doing that.
Yeah, there you go.
Do you?
I don't know. I'll just spitballing.
We're kind of just targeting the big sports, but it's kind of like making it.
It's good.
Well, when it comes down to it, it's quite funny.
Fuck,
it's in
I'm
New
sick
Zealand.
of listening to Jason Pine. There, I said it.
Yeah, but in New Zealand, the thing is, it's like is rugby or cricket. You know, it's hard for anything else to work on a large scale. You know, a big, large commercial scale. Which is what I mean. We are part of NZME. The ACC is part of NZME. Jeremy is a part stakeholder in it, but it's partly owned by NZME. So, you know, they want to make money. They've got good platforms for us to reach audiences. You know, there's no bigger platform than the Herald in terms of digital, especially. So that's where we're kind of trying to go.
Like some of their sports stuff could be, especially their online stuff,
have they got a sports
could
online
be better.
It's been decimated somewhat in the last wee while.
Just the online, the online, particularly nzherald.co.nz. That sports side I just find it really frustrating to deal with. I'm thinking about throwing in my premium subscription. Anyway, sorry, I digress.
It's Steve not got you a free one.
No,
fucking hell.
I know.
But yeah, it's funny. It is moving pretty rapidly, and especially radio broadcasting. Look, it's about the digital platform really.
But radio won't go away, will it?
No, it's a cockroach. You can't kill radio. Like they said that the Walkman was going to kill radio. They said that the iPod was going to kill radio. They said
the self-driving car is going to kill radio, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, the self-driving car comes along and you can do whatever you want.
Radio is a great cockroach because, you know, it's at the end people want to be entertained and they want personality, and radio provides that. It's a little It's a little companion in your ear, and it's so. I don't think it'll ever go away, but it will have to evolve, and the digital platform is where it is. Podcasts, it's funny because podcasts, they've been around for so long, but it just seems all of a sudden that people are into them. Maybe it's just access to them is a bit easier via Spotify and via iHeart. Maybe, because before it was just dominated by Apple. When we first started doing the BYC podcast 10 years ago, whatever it was, there was nowhere really to put it, I suppose. But it's going to be an exciting time for the ACC because it's, getting people like Ben Hurley on, James McConey on, and getting them on the roster and part of the team it's going to take it to the next levels. And Mark Stafford as well. He's a very passionate kind of guy, very passionate about sport and very trusted by all of the people he talks to as well.
Yeah, the access. I've seen some of the guests he's had on Staff Chat.
Totally.
Amazing.
He had
anyone you want.
Yeah, and he had Justin Marshall burst into tears talking about the Christchurch earthquake. He originally broke the Adi Savia story about him wanting to play rugby league for Samoa, but giving the actual real reason why he wanted to do it, because the headlines were all he wants to play league, where actually he just wants to play for Samoa to make his dad proud because his dad's Samoan. So it's kind of, he's got some great stories and he's got some great contacts. And
does he really do all those paintings as well?
Yeah.
That's amazing, that stuff. I don't know if you've seen it, Steve, on his Twitter feed. But...
I saw he did one for Michael Utting, I think.
Yeah,
yes,
that's right.
Did.
Who's not well at the moment, I think.
No.
Yeah. No, it's a very talented guy. So that's where we're kind of taking it. We're kind of it's taking it to the sports platform, entertainment platform. And like I keep saying to Dylan, what keeps making him angry is probably at the expense of editorial integrity. We're going for the entertainment side of it. We'll let the Herald and everyone do the kind of hard-hitting stuff, whereas if you want a bit of light entertainment, light relief, then that's what we're going to provide on the ACC side of it. And marrying it in with Radio Hodaki as well, because Hodaki is obviously a music station, but it's very closely married to, the pillars of Hodaki is, it's rock, comedy and sport. So that's what we try and bring to that, and that sport element is quite handy, having the ACC there, and that's it's a group of people who want to be part of it.
Yep.
Kind of a rogues gallery of white middle-aged men.
Yeah, speaking of, few little bits and pieces before we go, because I know it's a school night and it's getting late. Managing Jerry and Matt versus managing Lee and Jason.
Two very different teams.
Beasts.
Yeah.
Talk to me.
Well, I've known Jeremy for a very long time, so I've no problem managing Jeremy and Matt actually, because they're both lived a life already. Most of their misbehaviour has already, most of their mischievous ways and rebellion has been and gone.
Well, Jeremy must be exhausted because he's up so early and he does the night show on TV. And kids in the middle.
He's surviving, don't worry.
Not just that, but the longevity as well. Like you go right back to Havoc and Newsboard.
Yeah.
That's such a long kind of time in the game, right?
Yeah, he's a pretty smart operator, and it's funny because people look at the ACC and they think it's a bunch of not young, but a bunch of dudes having the time of their life. Don't work out that everyone's got kids. Everyone's actually got wives and kids and stuff. They kind of realise the fact that, like, when we get in a bit of trouble, you guys, you realise that we're fathers. We're not actual just total lunatics.
Because you've got the on-air personas, right? Like you come in and you're mad at them and stuff. And people
is that genuine?
think,
Some of that theory?
I find it quite therapeutic that some of the stuff I say, I actually genuinely mean it. Like how long and boring their voice breaks are, and
veiled humour,
and how when they're struggling for content, they just try and attack me because they've got no other content, or they just repeat stings or whatever. I actually genuinely mean that. Under the guise of steaming in. But no, those guys are like, they've been around for so long, and they get the game, and they've done radio for a long time, media for a long time. So I've got those guys are sweet. Jason and Lee were an interesting sort because they'd never done radio before, and so any radio norm was thrown out the window completely with those guys on the radio, and that's what made them good and great, and that's why people love them, because it was just insane.
I remember when they first came on this show, and it was like must-listen radio because you didn't know what was going to happen.
No, they didn't know either.
No.
They didn't know either. It was like insane stand-up comedy 5 days a week. So, but Lee chose he wanted to go off and do some more TV, and it's good to have Jace back as well because Jace is hilarious. But It's not too bad. I mean, look, everyone's, like I was saying, everyone's grown adults with kids. It's like you're not dealing with a lunatic 23-year-old, 4-year-old egomaniac. You know what I mean? It's kind of funny. It's kind of, you just deal with each other as kind of what we all are, 40-something dudes.
Yeah.
Like, so it's actually not too bad. And people are like, oh my God, how do you manage it? It's like, well, and most of the time it's probably me that's worse than them when it comes to behaviour on or off the air.
Which merges into my next question, which may be somewhat loaded. Is there any stunt or story that you've shared that's made your wife or mum temporarily disown you?
Oh, fuck yeah. My mum, yeah, big time. It was actually... It was... It was... I can remember because my dad rang me and he goes, you need to talk to your mum. And I was like, whatever. And then he came over and said, you need to go see your mum. Like, he drove over to her house. And I was like, why? And he goes, she's been told you said something on radio about her. I was like, what? So I've got cousins who live up in Northland, who have got farms up in Northland. They're from Hamilton as well. Toby Lynn and Mac Lynn are up there. And they listen to Hodaki all the time. And there was one breakfast show where I was on, and they said something about, you know, my mum, and I was like, well, about Sue Lane was my mum's name, and I was like, you leave Sue Lane out of this, and then Matt, I said, you leave Sue Lane out of this, and Jerry's like, what do you mean about Sue Lane? I was like, don't you even get started on Sue Lane, and I was like, that was where it kind of started, and it was just shut the fuck up about my mum, but they started to bring it just by going, oh, Sue Lane, like, made it kind of sexual, and then Scotty Stevenson came on for an interview, and there they said, Scotty Stevenson, Sue Lane. And he goes, look, for the record, I have not slept with Sue Lane. And that line got delivered back to my mum by my cousin's wife saying, they're talking about who's had sex with you or not on air. And I was like, oh, this is going to be an awkward conversation with my mum, like my 7-year-old mum. So going over there, she was fucking not happy. She was not happy, but she'd obviously, it's one of those things in radio. So you get it third or fourth hand, and then trying to explain to her what the joke was made it even worse. She's like, why were you even talking about me? I was like, oh, you just came out in conversation because they give my dad shit all the time about being Dr. Circumcision in Hamilton. And so it just came.
I might need to visit him.
Yeah. Just do it anymore.
Give me his number after the show.
Cash for 4s. He ain't did cash jobs. All he was worried about was the tax department were going to come after him. He didn't give a shit about us telling stories about his 4s. But and then I said to Mum, I just had to say, look, everything you hear on the radio or ACC is just total bullshit. Don't worry, it's totally made up. And she's like, are you sure? And I was like, wow. Most of it. That's most of it, so don't worry about it. That's about the closest shave I've had around that. My wife just refuses to even acknowledge that it exists. A bit like my moustache. She knows if she pays attention to it, then that's what I want, so she ignores it.
Yeah.
It's a good looking tash.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Yeah, thanks. But and it's quite funny because she's like, in her job, every now and then they find out, you know, her last name, and then that I work at Radio Hodaki, and they're like, your husband G Lane?
Is he?
G Lane? And they're like, and she goes, it's so sad. They all fan out. It's like they're supposed to be my manager, and he's like fanning. And I was like, I'm just in there just going. She goes, it's embarrassing. I was like, oh. Okay.
I love that detachment. I'm obviously not anywhere near the ACC standards, but I don't think Bonds listen to any Between Two Beers podcasts. So we've got Mike Lane on. So, I don't give a fuck.
Who the fuck is Mike Lane? Yeah, exactly.
Are wives and girlfriends, are they friends with each other in that clique? Oh, that must help as well, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, like, they don't hang out, but they all know each other. Like, you know, Tulsi, Jeremy's partner and stuff. But they don't, it's kind of, I think it pisses them off a little bit because it is kind of work. And I remember going away a lot. And obviously we get on so well and we'd have a few beers and go out and have a good time. It became very hard to say that we're working. You know what I mean? And you alluded to that earlier. It was like, even though we are and we're technically working, it was very hard.
Sorry that our job's awesome.
So sorry, I do my jobs with people I want to hang out with because obviously their jobs.
There's a Louis C.K. bit about that.
Yeah.
Sorry that I've got this amazing job and I earn shitloads of money for doing fuck all.
Sorry, I want to hang out with I end up hanging out with my friends most of the time. But that's quite funny because I don't have to see my outside work friends that much because it kind of consumed, the ACC kind of consumed everything, and then Rahodaki consumed everything. So I have to make a conscious effort to make sure I catch up with mates outside of media, which I think is good for you. Otherwise, you end up just talking
same things.
Just on media, did you, like me, just consume all of that kind of Kiwi content growing up? Like your Back of the Y, Eating Media Lunch, like all that sort of stuff? And did that influence you, or did you kind of...
I was away for most of that, to be honest. I was there. I was here for all of the Havoc and Newsboy sellout tours and stuff, which was hilarious because you know. It was Jeremy, guy you played cricket with, all of a sudden has got dyed hair and peroxide and running around with Mikey Havoc being like an idiot.
Video game man score.
Yeah. But then I went kind of didn't I knew of Back of the Y and I knew of Matt Heath, but I didn't really get into it that much. And I was away for most of the Eating Media Lunch period over in England. But I did do a lot of work with Pulp Sport and with and all that. So I helped write a lot of the Pulp Sport stuff. So I did kind of get into it that way.
Yeah.
And we wrote all the Tui sneaks and did all the Tui sneaks and stuff. That was good fun.
Cow was my favourite.
The Cow in Hamilton. Yeah, I think the favourite for me was the dress as a caterer bringing in a pallet, going, oh, mate, they're drinking piss in the south, sound like nobody's business. And the guy opens up, walk it in, right up to the boundary rope, sat on it and just started drinking. And I think he got through 3 or 4 cans before they worked out. That was one of my favourites.
Did you, again, I'm kind of fanboying a little bit, but did you do the 12th Man tapes growing up as well?
Yes. Yeah. I definitely did those. Yeah, and I was a huge fan of those.
Yeah.
They were gold.
Yeah, my brother had them and I had to sneak in and listen to them as a as a younger kid, just giggling away.
Definitely did those. They were on high rotate.
Very good.
Well, my list's looking done, Shay. How are you looking over there?
Oh, I was really interested in the champagne rugby stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And how different it is to doing a cricket game, doing a rugby game. And did you have to kind of adjust your approach to it?
It's kind of funny. I personally don't think we've kind of nailed the rugby, to be honest. Because we knew it was going to be different because we couldn't labour onto a topic for ages because cricket's got that rhythm and we always knew the top of the bowlers run up, you'd shut up because the ball-by-ball guy needs to call it, say the score, describe what's happened, and then he'll leave the gap for you to start talking again.
When you say that, it does tell me that your ACC cricket commentary is actually quite structured.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. No, and that is totally by design. We always did that at the start, and that's what we said. The ball-by-ball person has to describe what's going on and has a role to do. The other 2 guys, you should just be bouncing off each other, talking total shit. But as soon as that bowler comes into bowl, you shut the fuck up and allow the game to be called. And for the rugby, we struggled a little bit to work out how much we call the game and how much shit we talk. And people are like, oh, there's heaps of time, there's heaps of scrum resets, but there's actually not that much time. It's, it's seconds, not minutes. So we kind of got to a point where we thought we'd call the game to a point and then talk shit, play songs, fuck around. And as soon as a little bit of action start, the person calling the ball-by-ball would start calling it again until it slows down and then would stop it and the otherwise would carry on. But it is hard. It's really
tough,
hard.
Right? Like who's your target audience? Is it people that are watching the game and this is on in the background, or is it people who are not watching the game?
I think it's important that we're on the yellow button on Sky with rugby, because people can consume it and know what's going on and listen to the comedy. Whereas if it was just audio, it's very hard to describe. It's radio commentary has to be very descriptive. You're 10 metres inside the half, 5 metres in from the far touch.
Yes.
You're constantly describing. And it's hard to fit in anything else. So I think it's important. So we are partnering with Sky quite a lot because it's good for them because we push people to watch the coverage on Sky is to get the yellow button and do it that way. And then we can talk more shit. I know it sounds terrible. This is a terrible strategy. Talk more shit. We can actually, involve more bits in the commentary that are funny, like James McConey's songs that he writes and all that kind of crap. And
can you access the yellow button? Because I use Sky. I piggyback off my mum's account.
Yeah, on the Sky
and
Go.
Throw it up on my phone.
Unfortunately, you got to have the box. That's the only kind of
box. Got to box it.
Yeah, you got to have the box. Unfortunately,
I've been saying that to you.
Yeah,
you got to go.
Big box guy.
Yeah.
Always been a box guy.
My only last question before we let you go is: do you giggle as much as maybe everyone in the audience do at the Nanaya Mahuta?
Oh,
you trim your downstairs audio.
I love that because genuinely Matt Heath hates it so much. Like he has to take his headphones off and he runs to the corner of the room.
That's so funny.
But I like that because it's funny. It's funny how that was only a few years ago. Yet
it was last election, right?
Well, yes, I suppose so. 3 years ago.
Yeah.
But I even asked Paula Bennett the same question, and like
hers was a great answer.
Yeah, of course I do.
Yeah. So pad, and then quickly, of course I do.
Yeah, but it's funny because it's like 3 years ago, but now I don't think they would ask those questions of politicians now.
Yeah,
but back then they just hound them.
Amazing how things change how fast.
It's so funny, and it makes them uncomfortable to think because every time they play it, they're like, "What were we thinking?" Like because it's asking Nanaia Mahuta, a woman of great mana, whether she trims her downstairs. And like her saying, "What?" and then going, "Don't go downstairs!" like and just going in like backing it up. It's every time they do it, they just like.
It's a tough spot. Are you going? Are you doubling down, or are you ejecting?
Yeah,
He's
doubled down. And
but as loud and as quickly as he could.
It's like yelling it as well. But it's pretty funny. And anytime you want to just bring Matt down, or if he's having a go at you just go. About this, Matt. You play.
Did they ask John Keefe if he fed the chickens as well?
Yes. Yeah. No, that ended up on John Oliver.
Amazing.
Yeah. He asked them.
Leader of the nation.
That was. Yeah. Oh. It was pretty incredible. But as a result, a lot of people didn't come on the show because of that. They didn't want to be asked that. Have you been?
Can understand that.
Yeah.
One of those two.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Mike Lane, I think that's a great place to finish. Thank you so much for the epic chat. What a life and career. Look forward to following the future journeys. And can I just say, Shay, the Popples breweries, New England India Pale Ales, have gone down a treat. Thanks again to Craft.
But I agree.
What a bar. Best bar in Hamilton.
Sweet as.
Cheers, Mike.
No,
been great.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
That was a good yarn.